theyeshiva.net.
We're up to Daf Hey Amud Beis. I'm sorry, I've downloaded Amud Beis. So in summation, the Gemarah explained that Rosh Hashanah l'Regalim refers to Pesach, which is the first Yom Tov, and the anniversary when the Yom Tovim begin. The era, the time, the period of the holidays. When is the Rosh Hashanah? When they begin on Pesach. This follows, and it's only relevant according to the view of Reb Shimon ben Yochai, who held that when it comes to Bal Teacher, the transgression to delay, pledges, sacrifices that you committed for the Beis HaMikdash, or various pledges that you make for poor people, Trumas, Meisters, and so forth. So you have to wait in order to be over on Bal Teacher, what is called delay, only if Pesach passes, Shavuos passes, Sukkot passes, and it has to pass in the order. Meaning, if you make a pledge before Shavuos, you still have Shavuos, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, you have 5 holidays. In that discussion, the Gemarah already brought the 5 opinions about Bal Teacher, right? Opinion number 1 was Tanakama, the first Tana who holds Bal Teacher is 3 Yom Tovim, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot in any order. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai is the most lenient. He can give you sometimes 5 holidays because it's in the order of Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, l'Regalim. Rabbi Meir is the most stringent. He gives you 1 Yom Tov. Any Yom Tov, Pesach, Shavuos, or Sukkot is Bal Teacher. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov is 1 less stringent, but also quite stringent. He gives you 2 Yom Tovim. And finally, Rabbi Lazar, the son of Reb Shimon, he gives you only the holiday of Sukkot. So sometimes it could be very stringent if you made a pledge before Sukkot. On the other hand, if you made a pledge before Pesach, or after Sukkot before Pesach, so then you still have Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, it would be like Tanakama. So he could fluctuate, because you always have to wait for Sukkot. That's the opinion of Rabbi Lazar, the son of Reb Shimon. So the Gemarah was now basically analyzing how everybody reached his opinion. Where did that happen? Of course, the only thing the Torah says is Bal Teacher. You make a neder, you shouldn't delay it. What the definition of that is remains for open discussion and open debate. So Kederech of the Tanoim, that they dealt with the text of Chumash and Tanakh in generally, and they overviewed the entire text, they mastered the entire text, and they searched for clues in Moshe Rabbeinu's text, B'pi HaGvura, how you're supposed to figure out what the halacha Torah says. For example, Bal Teacher. That's what they said. Now, I just want to give here a little introduction. I think it would be worthwhile. It's not only introduction for this sugya, it's probably for thousands and thousands of sugyas in Gemarah that often people misunderstand because it seems very strange. For example, let's remember what the Gemarah does here. How does the Gemarah approach this problem of Bal Teacher? It says you have to take a pasuk in Parshas Re'eh. Parshas Re'eh, the pasuk speaks about Shalosh Regalim, speaks about Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. Then says Shalosh Pam Bashana Yira Kol Schorchas Pnei Adon Hashem B'Makam Hashivcha B'Chag HaMatzos B'Chag HaShavuos B'Chag HaSukkos. 3 times a year you should show up to Yerushalayim to see Hashem, so to speak, and He should see you. When? Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos. Those 3 words are superfluous because you're talking about them. You're talking about the 3 holidays. Or you should say during these 3 times a year you should come. You don't have to repeat Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos. Every word is meticulous and precise. Like an Ibrik Kaved, there's nothing extra. It comes to teach us. What does it come to teach us? Here now there's a big machlekes. Tanakama says it comes to teach us that you shouldn't come empty-handed on these 3 Yom Tovim, meaning all your pledges. In addition to the karbanos you have to bring Yom Tov, all your pledges, these 3 words teach us that all your pledges that you brought, you have these 3 Yom Tovim, Matzah, Shavuos, and Sukkos, to bring it, not to come empty-handed. If you did not, you're over on Bal Teacher. That was the first opinion. Shimon's opinion says it didn't have to say Sukkos. It didn't have to say Sukkos. Why did it have to say Chag HaSukkos? Because even when you want to tell me that the Torah is talking about Sukkos already, so it could have said Yirah Kol Schorchas Pnei Hashem Alechecha V'Makam Hashivcha B'Chag HaMatzos or B'Chag HaShavuos Shalosh Pamim B'Shana. So why does it say B'Chag HaSukkos? So the Shimon says, even though you need the 3 repeated because of Bal Teacher, it still didn't have to say B'Chag HaSukkos because you're talking about Chag HaSukkos. The reason he repeats Chag HaSukkos is to teach me that that's Acheron. That's the last one. In other words, you have to have it according to the order of Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, and Chag HaSukkos. So Reb Shimon disagrees. Taka, you need the names of the Yom Tovim to teach you about Bal Teacher, like Tanakama says. But why does the Torah have to repeat Chag HaSukkos, which you're already talking about? So it could have said, and in Chag HaMatzos, and in Chag HaShavuos, Shalosh Pamim B'Shana. To teach me, no, that it has to be, Sukkos has to be after Pesach and Shavuos. Okay, so we settled with two shittas. Reb Meir brought a whole other pasuk, Uvasa Shama, V'Havesim Shama, which according to him meant, when you're obligated to come, you have to bring a carbon. And you're obligated in any Yom Tov. You're obligated in any Yom Tov. Rebbe Lezer ben Yaakov brought a pasuk from Pinchas, Eile Tasu L'Hashem b'moy adeichem, levad midreichem v'nidreisech. These are the musafim you bring on every Yom Tov, on all of your Yom Tov, besides the regular pledges. The regular pledges, you have moy adeichem, you have 2 Yom Tov. Rebbe Lezer ben Reb Shimon, finally, the last opinion, what does he say? He has the same problem like his father. Chag HaSukkos is extra. So why does it say Chag HaSukkos according to him? Because that's goyrim. The main thing is Sukkos. Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos, Sukkos didn't have to say. The reason it says Sukkos is because that's what's Bal Teacher. Of course, according to him, you have to understand why you need Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, but that's not relevant b'chlal to Bal Teacher, unlike his father and Tanakama, who of course need all 3 because Bal Teacher requires all 3. So the Gemara now wants to know the big question, Reb Meir, Rebbe Lezer ben Yaakov, what do they do with Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos? They don't believe in Bal Teacher, you need 3 Yom Tovim, either you need 1 or you need 2. And according to Rebbe Lezer ben Reb Shimon, you need 1 with the Sukkos, you don't need Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos. So this whole pasuk you just explained to us that these 3 names are superfluous, they're unnecessary because we already know about the mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel. So the Gemara says that they need it for a whole different halacha. What's the halacha? The halacha was that Shavuos, you can bring your carbon that you're obligated to bring the first day of Shavuos. You have 6 days after Shavuos, which we call today Yemei Tashlumin of Shavuos, and it's expressed in the halacha nowadays that you don't say Tachron, for those who usually say Tachron, so it means something. So Zayin, Ches, Tes, Yud, Yud Aleph, and Yud Beis, 6 days after Shavuos are called Yemei Tashlumin, just like you have it when? Just like you have it on Pesach, where if you didn't bring the karbanas that you're obligated to bring on the first day of Pesach, you could easily bring it the second day, the third day, all the way through Shvi Shal Pesach, which is of course the last day of Pesach. Remember, of course, that in Yerushalayim and in Eretz Yisrael, you didn't have what we call Acharon Shal Pesach, the 8 days of Pesach, because Torah says Pesach is 7 days, and there was no question of the days. So that's why the Torah puts together Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos, Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, at this point, to compare Shavuos to Matzos. Matzos, you have Tashlum in 7 days. Shavuos, you have Tashlum in 7 days. Of course, Shavuos is a big novelty because it's outside of Yom Tov. It's mundane days. Where Pesach and Sukkos, it's of course all Yom Tov. So first of all, we settled now why the Meir needs Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos, why the Bal Teacher ben Yaakov needs Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos, why the Bal Teacher ben Reb Shimon would need Chag HaMatzos and Chag HaShavuos, Sukkos he needs for Bal Teacher. Of course, Tanakama and Reb Shimon, we never had a question. Of course, they need these 3 holidays to teach you the very din of Bal Teacher, that you have 3 Yom Tovim in which to bring your pledges. The question is, do you need it in order or not in order? Reb Shimon says you need it in order. Tanakama says you don't need it in order. Atkan. Now the Gemara is going to get more into this, with a more arichas. I just want to make here a general comment that I think is worthwhile whenever you learn Mishnayos, and especially when you learn Gemarah. Simply to understand, in other words, a person approaches this, so okay, those who went to yeshiva their whole life are used to these types of discussions. When you learn it for the first time or the second time, or even the third time, and sometimes even the 100th time, it looks strange how all these halachas, it says a pasuk about Bal Teacher and Dvarim Perek Chav Gimel, right? And then suddenly you have, what's the definition of Bal Teacher? They bring all these psukim from Kol HaTorah Kula, everybody different psukim, to explain Bal Teacher. And then the question is, so why does it say these psukim according to the other opinion who doesn't need these psukim, so you find something else for them? And then the question is, the other view who needs these psukim for that limit, how do they learn the new halachas, so you find something else for them? It's like, so we learn it, we just read it. Imagine you had to do all this from scratch. Imagine you were sitting with the Tanaim and the Beis Medrash, and you had to come up with this. You have to put yourself as much as possible into their. We already read a text showing this pasuk, that pasuk, that pasuk. Okay, so first of all, you understand how they had a mastery of the Tanakh, right? How they had a mastery of the Tanakh. It wasn't like to quote Rabbi Chaim Shul about something else. Everybody knows how to read Ashrei from the beginning to the end. Ashrei Yeshu v'sech Edel Luchasal. But how many people could read Ashrei backwards, right? Bal Peh, yeah. Right, so go Hallelujah, Olam, Va'ad, Me'ata, backwards, in the same fluidity. So sometimes mastering something well doesn't mean you mastered it. Mastering well means you can read it backwards and forwards in the same swiftness. So first of all, that's what type of... Yeah, that's what he said. Versus his brother, I think. Right? Versus his brother. He was explaining the difference of the Lamdas, the Gainas of his brother, who was a legendary Gon, versus the Vilna Gon, who was his Rebbe. So he explained the two ways of knowing Ashrei. So he says you could know everything, but you know it like Ashrei, everybody knows Ashrei, and then knowing it backwards, it's a different level of knowledge. It's just, I'm paraphrasing that idea. So that's number one, of course. But there's something else I think it's important to emphasize, and I'm saying it as a Hakdama Klalas B'chlal. This word I saw many years ago from Reb Shimshon Rafal Hirsch. He brings it in Parshas Mishpatim, or other Parshas, where it starts all the drashas of a Kama, Bab Metzia, on the details of all the halachas, whether it's halachas of Avodim, halachas Nezikin, the whole Parshas Mishpatim, from one pasuk you have so many different halachas, which till Parshas Mishpatim you don't have, because it's more or less stories from Bereshis till Mishpat. And he brings out a beautiful idea, and it rings so true, because when you learn Torah Shabbat a lot, you see how authentic the idea is. We all learn like this. There's Torah Shebeksav, that's like Chumash. Then you have Tanakh. Then you have Mishnayos and Gemara is the explanation of Torah Shebeksav. How do they explain it? Some things they had a tradition, an Esrik, Pri Eitz Hadar is an Esrik, and even there they argue how you learn it out from Pri Eitz Hadar. There's 4 or 5 opinions in Masechta Sukkah how you learn Esrik from Pri Eitz Hadar. Sometimes they had a tradition, sometimes they didn't have, sometimes there's arguments, usually sometimes there's no debates, but it's all explaining the text of Torah Shabbat. Like here we're trying to understand what Bal Teacher means, what it means not to delay it a day, a second, a minute, a year, 10 years, 100 years, 3 months, a month. Everyone has a different opinion. The Emes says, the Rambam says, in Yad HaChazaka, a famous expression, and Akdama to the Rambam's Mishnah Torah, Torah b'firusha nitna. Torah was given with a pirush. In other words, when Moshe Rabbeinu gave the text of the Torah, he gave it with an oral shir, with an oral commentary. Which everybody, if you're an honest, objective person, you understand that it had to be that way. Why? Because you take a text of Chumash and you realize there's no way you can decipher not even one mitzvah of 630 mitzvahs. First of all, you don't know how to read the text. We gave an example, you could have easily read it, don't cook a goat in the fat of his mother. How do you even know it's milk of the mother? You have no proof. It had to come with some tradition, simply how to pronounce the words, if nothing else. Then there's issues of sentences, there's issues of commas, question marks, exclamation points. Then there is the ambiguity in which most mitzvahs are communicated. I have to tie something on my hands. What do I tie? Potato peels? What? In a hut? What type of hut? Outdoors, indoors? What does the hut make up? There's almost no mitzvah that has clever. I would read it, I would take a pen and write something on my doorpost. Write on the doorpost, or take a pen and write something on your doorpost. That's what it says. Or in the gate going into your courtyard in your city. So I have to have parchment, I have to write chumash, and then I have to put it here. All these things, where on the door, which side, etc. Clear. But there's really something much, much deeper going on. This is what I want to bring out. What used to happen was as follows. Moshe Rabbeinu gave a shir. Moshe Rabbeinu, for 40 years, Moshe Rabbeinu gave a shir. The Gemara describes in Erev and Daf Nondalet exactly how it happened. Taner Rabbanon, Ketzat said the Mishnah, Moshe Rabbeinu would come, he would teach his brother, he would teach his nephews, teach Yeshua, and then they would teach everybody, and he would teach everybody. They heard from Moshe the shir 4 times. Everybody heard from Moshe the shir at least once. Some people heard it 2, 3. Moshe Rabbeinu would give the same shir, probably on different levels, 4 times, beginning with his brother, down to his nephews, and then ultimately to all of the Skenim and all of Klal Yisrael. Okay. He gave a shir. The shir was a long shir. It was a shir giving over all Taryag mitzvahs with all their explanations, their yesodus, their ramifications, various applications, etc. What happened? Together with the shir, at the end of the shir, Moshe Rabbeinu gave notes. He gave text for people to be able to review the shir. Okay, now imagine you're sitting at a shir, and we're not even talking about, you're sitting at a shir of a brilliant Rosh Hashiva or teacher or whatever, and the shir goes for 4 hours, okay, to make sure everybody is asleep at some point. Okay, today even 10 minutes everybody's asleep, but 4 hours. It's intense, it's heavy. And the person who's on any topic, could be an interesting topic, whatever it is, you're sitting. Now, to write word for word, it's impossible because the person is speaking flat, and plus you want to listen, you want to chap. But what you do is, people do it constantly. Every 3 minutes, you can ask Dr. Michelle. Every 3 minutes, you write down a line, like to recap in your mind the nekuda of what he said, and you'll put like 100 exclamation points and 3 underlines, just to remember. Wow, this was gewaldic. And you do this, and after 3 hours, you have a page of the recaps in your mind. You come home, you tell your wife it was an unbelievable lecture on marriage. She says, what did he say? Oh, I have notes. She takes a look. She says, this is rubbish. This is nonsense. I don't understand a word. What does this say? So he looks at her, he says, if you would have been there, you would understand my notes. You weren't there, you don't understand my notes. You read Chumash. If you would have been there, you would have understood my notes. The brilliance of Chumash is, Moshe took 4 hours, or 8 hours, or 3 weeks, or 3 months, and he put it in to 1 pasuk, or 2 psukim, or 3 psukim. And when you read the pasuk and you were there, you see every word that he said. This is not only a student sitting at the shir and writing down according to his havana. This is the teacher himself, and the ultimate teacher himself, transcribing in a few words all the information. So yes, there's an extra vav that he put in. There's an extra letter he put in, an extra word he put in, an extra 3 words he put in. He said this already somewhere else, he didn't have to say it. All to intimate and allude to every single nuance of the shir. So it's not that Torah Sheba'al Peh is a commentary on Torah Sheba'Ksav. Torah Sheba'Ksav is a commentary on Torah Sheba'al Peh. Torah Sheba'Ksav really, not the word commentary, Torah Sheba'Ksav is really a reflection of Torah Sheba'al Peh. It's a mirror of Torah Sheba'al Peh. It captures the whole Torah Sheba'al Peh in brief and concise words. And when you understand that, what the Gemarah is really doing is saying, let's unravel Moshe Rabbeinu's shir on the text. What was the shir on the text? Let's see in the text how he put into the text of the whole Chumash all of the details and the nuances of the mitzvahs that he could not convey clearly in the text, because it would be infinite, it would be ein l'dav soif, to put in every possible interpretation and every possible application. And then, of course, there are the formulas that he gave, Yud Gimel Midas Shatar Nidreshes Behen, in order to be able to do new halachas that will come up in other situations, and new halachas that he doesn't talk about. This is how he describes the relationship between Torah and Torah is much more intimate than people imagine. The primary communication of Moshe was a shir. The text was to allow Klal Yisrael to have on paper something that can recap in a few little words everything he said, and the brilliance which was written with Pi HaGvura is that it contains every detail of the shir. So now let's continue to the next step. Halacha l'Moshe Messina is different. Halacha l'Moshe Messina means the way the Rambam describes it in the Hakdama to Pirush HaMishnayos. I mean, the truth is that it should be obligatory learning in every single yeshiva, high school for sure, the introduction of the Rambam to Pirush HaMishnayos. The introduction is a very long introduction, but without that, you start reading Mishnayos, Gemarah, constantly. It's Pashut how everything, the whole structure of, you see Pashut to take it seriously, because people read, they think it's a hefgevalt. Okay, well, hakarais another pasuk. Okay, let's hakarais another pasuk. Boom. Okay, so Pashut, Mr. Google knows every pasuk. Boom. There's no structure. There's no mahalach. Like, what's going on here? What were they trying to do? So the Rambam gives a very, the Rambam doesn't say this in the Kud I'm saying, but the Rambam just gives the whole mahalach. So over there he brings out at length that halacha l'Moshe Messina is Pashut, that there were traditions given orally how to explain certain things. The classic example would be, there was never an argument, nobody ever came to Sukkot to Shul with an orange. Ever. We have arguments about everything. How long the hadas should be, we'll fight about. How big the kazayas matzah is going to be, we'll fight about. What if the hadas is a myrtle branch, right? Or some other branch, no one ever argued. I don't want to say there's no such a thing as a reform esrog. There's no such a thing as a reform esrog. Huh? Mayavis was a big one. Until he established his halacha l'maisha mesina. Huh? The brisker of. So halacha l'maisha mesina means traditions in which there's no dispute and no argument. There's no argument in it. There could be an argument how you see it in the text. For example, Priyetz Hadar, how it's an esrog. But nobody argued that Priyetz Hadar on Sukkot is an esrog. Why it's halacha l'maisha mesina? Or l'mashal in Sukkot, the Gemara says, good achis, good asik, certain halachas, halacha l'maisha mesina. These were halachas, so sometimes it's in the text, sometimes it's not in the text. But it's things in which there was no dispute. Tefillin has to be black. Nobody ever argued about that. Tefillin has to be square. Nobody ever argued about it. It doesn't say anywhere in Chumash, and you don't have it hinted in the text that tefillin has to be black. I mean, you have it hinted, but not in Sugyas and Gemarah. You have it in Kabbalah. So over there, it's halacha l'maisha mesina, etc. Schach has to be psoilas goyd and Yaakov. You can't have all these.
And like you said, that Kabbalah is part of that share.
Yeah, of course. Huh? No, it's the best writer you can have because you have everything in brevity, but it's hard to decipher. The Gemarah Legabe later is also notes. That's true. That's also true. Yeah.
I think it's the same thing. What's the right Lashon HaKodesh? Everybody, you go there, it's a show today. Everybody speaks ostensibly Lashon HaKodesh. It's funny. Like I proved to you because I can speak Hebrew, so I could work in.
He went to an old pan and he learned Hebrew.
You know, in the Kentucky Fried Chicken in Tel Aviv. You know, what's the? This is every medrash, everything, every chazal that they say about the words the brothers said to each other, they understood that. When they were talking, this is the way they understood it. Every single word, with 100 different words,
that's what the Chizkuni
I
says.
think it's the Chizkuni. He says, that's the raya. You see, I talk to you and all these kavanas, but that's the same idea.
Pia medaber aleichem. It's just a perspective to hold in mind whenever you're learning Torah Shabbal Peh, how it worked. So now let's continue. We're up to Daf Dalet Amud Beis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
You were
7,
allowed
8.
to write it down? You were allowed to write
2,
down?
3, 4, 5, 6,
I
7.
thought you
7
heard
lines to the
was
bottom.
first part.
No, Dvarim Shabbal Peh. Dvarim Shabiksav Yater Rishai Lemri Bal Peh. Dvarim Shabbal Peh Yater Rishai Lichtav. The whole Shir not. But the Torah Shabiksav was a recap, a kitzer of the Nekuda. That's Torah Shabiksav already. Moshe wrote it down.
Okay.
What's the problem?
No, I didn't know what you were allowed to write down outside of the Chumash itself. I thought Rabbi Yehuda Anasi was the first one to really...
Mishnayos.
Yeah, but Mishnayos is really the Chumash extrapolated.
Right. They didn't write it down, but people had notes. People did have notes, the Gemara says. Zog the Gemarah weiter, velikash. The line starts mamish close to the end of the Dalet. Velikash l'chag HaSukkos.
There's no pussy beferish that says Bal Teacher.
No, it says Bal Teacher. But what is Bal Teacher?
Where does it say Bal Teacher?
Dvarim Perek Chav Gimel. Hast du Chumash? Gib mal guck. Dvarim Perek Chav Gimel Pasuk Chav Beis. Ki siddur neder l'Hashem Elokecha lo yisa acher l'shalma. Okay, which the Gemara is soon going to analyze that pasuk at length. Zog the Gemara weiter v'leikash l'chag HaSukkos. You compared Shavuos to Pesach. Why don't you compare it to Sukkos? It says Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos. Why don't you go left? Why do you have to go right? Mala halon shmoina afkan shmoina. Sukkos you have tashlum and also not only for 7 days but 8 days. Shmini Atzeres. Pesach you don't have an 8th day. But Sukkot, you have Shmini Atzeres. Here too, should be 8 days. In other words, till Yud Gimel 7. And for the Gemara, no, Shmini Regel b'fnei atzmayu. Shmini Atzeres is a Yom Tif in and of itself. It's not part of Sukkot. So when the Torah says Chag HaSukkos, we would say it means 7 days of Sukkot, not the 8th day. And therefore, you cannot fulfill the obligation of bringing Karbonis on the 8th day of Sukkot. So therefore, we explained that Reb Meir, Reb Elazar ben Yaakov, they use this pasuk. The 8th day of Shavuos. So therefore, Reb Meir, Reb Elazar ben Yaakov, and Rebbe Lazar Rebbe Shia, they're comparing Chag HaShavuos to Chag HaMatzos, not to Chag HaSukkos, because over there Shmini Atzeres is a separate holiday. Frag the Gemarah, 1 second. When do you say the 8th day is a Yom Tov for itself? Le'inyin Pazar Koshev. Legabi 6 halachas, which are hinted in this acronym of Pei Zayin Reish Kuf Shin Beis. We will see in Rashi what these mean. Payos Zman Regel Korban Shir Bracha. Pazar Kashev, Avalinian Tashlumin, Divrei Hakal Tashlumin Dirishino. But when it comes to fulfilling the obligation of the Karbonis, everybody holds that the 8th day is a continuum of the first. The Tanam, we have a Mishnah in Chagiga, Misha Loi Chag. If somebody did not bring the Karban Chagiga, Yom Tov Rishon on the first day of Sukkot, then the halacha is Chagigas Kol HaRegel, he could bring it throughout Yom Tov, Ubi Yom Tov Ha'achron Shel Yom Tov Ha'achron Shel Chag, and even on the last day of Yom Tov, meaning Shmini Atzeres. So we have a clear Mishnah in Chagiga that the 8th day of Sukkot you could bring the Karbonis of Sukkot. That means Sukkot does have Tashlum and Kol Shmaina. So we're back to our first question. Why did we compare Shavuos to Pesach and not Shavuos to Sukkot? It's not fair. You're dripping off one day from Shavuos. And for the Gemarah, Tafasta Meruba Loi Tafasta. Tafasta Mua Tafasta. You grab a lot, you get nothing, or you miss. If you grab a little bit, you grabbed. Meaning, if I give you an opportunity to fetch, to grab one of two things, and you don't know which one you're supposed to take, so it's always better to take the minimal amount than the larger amount. Why? Because if it turns out that really you were supposed to take the larger amount, okay, at least you're not going to lose anything. You have to get more, but you're not going to lose anything. But if you take the larger amount, and you figure out that really you have to take the smaller amount, ultimately you're going to lose, you're going to forfeit that which were you supposed to get, and you're going to look like a ganav and a shakran, a thief and a liar. So you're always safe for taking the minimum amount, which anyway you're going to get. So here also, you could compare Shavuos to Sukkot and say, you have 8 days for the carbon on Shavuos. You could compare Shavuos to Pesach and say, you have 7 days. We're not sure which way to go. It says Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos. So better to be Tafasta Muat, to compare it to Pesach and say you have 7 days. Because if you say 8 days, I'm going to tell you, how do you know the Torah wants to compare it to Sukkot and not to Pesach? Maybe it's 7. 7 includes 8. 7 doesn't include 8. But 8 includes 7. So if you go to Pesach, you're secure. If you go to Sukkot, you're insecure. So when Chazal have to decide which one, they go to the Mu'at and not the Merubah to be able to be secure.
In Mesechtes Chagiga, it says that they gave him time to leave. Shmini Atzeres and Issachar, time because we prayed for the rain beforehand. So it wasn't really a Yom Tov. It was more people said to go home.
But you're not allowed to do malacha.
What?
It's just like by us, you're not allowed to do malacha.
So
It's still a Yom Tov, you're not allowed to do malacha. It's not like the other days of Sukkot.
You can't do. I'm saying it's a regular Yom Tov, but it's more.
Yeah, you make kiddush, everything, meals,
I'm saying beforehand. It was more time for everyone to go home.
You mean kosher lai pridaschem.
Right.
Rashi brings. Okay, that's the spiritual idea. Hashem says, let's spend one more day because I don't want to separate from you. But on the contrary, that's a day in which you spend as Yom Tov. What is Pazar Koshev? So Rashi is a long Rashi here. Let's first, Minayin Latzeres. Minayin Latzeres Akrashi. Dilu b'chaga Sukkos u'b'chaga Matzos nafkalan mi'v'chagoysim oisei l'Hashem shivas yom. Sukkos and Shavuot and Pesach is not a question you have Tashlum, and it says, v'chagoysim oisei l'Hashem shivas yom yochel yuchayin kol zayin tamud loimer oisei atochayu v'yatochayu kol zayin. You would think you have to be a carbon chagigas shivas yom. It says v'chagoysim oisei. Oisei means singularly, only him. Shivas yom, in other words, one carbon. So I just say kol shivas yamim, shivas yamim, l'tashlumim, shem loy chag chagigasi b'rishon yakirvena b'shem. So by Sukkot you don't need a limud. It says a pasuk, the chag could be shivas yamim. It doesn't mean you have to bring 7 days of carbon. It means you have to bring 1 day. But if you didn't bring the first day, you have day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The same we learn by Pesach. Pesach also has 7 days. We compare Pesach to Sukkot. Shavuos we don't know because Shavuos is only 1 day. So we have this pasuk in Re'eh, Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos to teach you this halach. Pazar Koshev, Kfar Pirashte b'Masechta Yuma u'Masechta Sukkah. I already explained this in 2 places, Rashi says. But here, he says it again. To and Payas. The word Fei is Payas. Payas means a lot, a goyrel. Lepar haba b'shmini, to the bull that comes on the 8th day. You have to remember, as it says in Parshas Pinchas, that on Sukkot we had the system was known as Parei HaChag. Shammai holds that the whole Chanukah is compared to Parei HaChag 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The first day of Sukkot they had to bring 13 bulls in the Karban Musaf. The second day 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, and finally you have 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, and a Shana Rabbah, the seventh day of Sukkot, you brought 7 bulls. We would expect Shmini Atzeres, you should go to 6. You don't. But Yom HaShmini Atzeres, Par Echad, Ayil Echad. 1 bull and 1 ram. All the other days you had 13 bulls, 12 bulls, 11 bulls, plus you had 2 rams, plus you had 14 sheep. But Yom HaShmini Atzeres, you have Par Echad, Ayil Echad, and Shiva Chvas. So it's a whole different system. So Rashi says, it doesn't follow the Seder of the Mishmaris, meaning the way they used to work was they had all the Koyanim in the whole Eretz Yisrael, they would divide them into 24 Mishmaris, the word Mishmar, 24 groups. And therefore each group would have, so you have 24 groups, so you have 53 or 52 weeks in the year, let's say around 50 weeks in the year. So you have 24, so each group of Kohanim only had 2 weeks in the Beis HaMikdash, because 24 twice is 48. And then a few groups had third time in the Beis HaMikdash. So your Mishmar, you had your week when you served in the Beis HaMikdash. 24. The rest of the time, the Kohanim were free. They were teachers. They would sit and learn. They would teach. They were always dedicated to Ruchnias. But 1 week they served in the Beis HaMikdash a year, usually 2 weeks, and some got to serve 3 weeks. So that was during the whole year. During Shalosh Regalim, during Pesach Shavuot Sukkot, when Klal Yisrael made a mass aliyah, so then all the Mishmaras could come in and work in the Beis HaMikdash. So the system by Sukkot, Rashi says is, Sheshanu v'shalshu b'parei achad chutz mishtayim sheshanu v'lo shalshu. If you have 70 bulls, so how did they do it? They gave all the Mishmaras an opportunity to offer these bulls. So he says all the Mishmaras got 3 opportunities to do it. Besides 2, Sheshana v'loy shalshu, that only did 2 bulls and not 3 bulls. Because if you have 24, 48, right? 24, 48, and then the next 24 is what? So you have 58, 68 is 72. So you miss, it's an extra 2. So besides 2 groups, everybody did 3 bulls, and 2 groups only did 2 bulls over sukkahs, over those sukkahs. So you would think, Uparshal Shmini, what should be justice? Come Shmini Atzeres, give one of those 2 groups the last bull, because it never got to do 3 bulls. You don't go back to those 2 groups. It's a new Yom Tov. We start from scratch now. Why should you get it over me? It's not a hemshich to sukkahs b'negei payus. So when it comes to the girdle, you make a whole new girdle. Who gets this bull for Shmini Atzeres? That's number 1. Payus means a lot. Who is going to offer the 1 bull of Shmini Atzeres? Next, the tones man, it needs a separate shechiyanu. Usually the 8th day of Yom Tov. You don't make a shechiyanu on a Shana Rabbah. You don't make a shechiyanu on Chalamayit. We make a shechiyanu the first 2 days of Yom Tov, even though the second day you shouldn't make a shechiyanu. Why? And as you saw, they don't make the second day of Yom Tov because it's Chalamayit. We make simply because Chazal said they felt that if you're not going to make a bracha the second day of Galias, people are going to disregard it. It's not significant. Yeah. So that's why we make a shechiyanu the second day. Really, the second day you're not supposed to make a shechiyanu. Hashana Rabbi, you don't make a shechiyanu. The 8th day you make a shechiyanu. Shmini Atzeres, you make a shechiyanu. Achron Shal Pesach, you don't make a shechiyanu, right? You don't make a shechiyanu Achron Shal Pesach. Why? Our Achron Shal Pesach is not a new Yom Tov. It's Shvi Shal Pesach, and Shvi Shal Pesach is not a new Yom Tov. Shechiyanu you only make on a new thing. I think I told you once the Vart when we were learning Beitza. Very interesting word from Rabbi Yasher Ber Soloveitchik. The Gemara says in Masechta Sukkah that Hilchasa, when it comes to Shmini Atzeres, Yisuvi Yisvinon, you have to sit in the sukkah, or Brucha Loy Mevrachina, you don't make a bracha Leisha B'sukkah. That's a halacha in Gemara. The pella is, whenever the Gemara says Hilchasa, there's no argument. If the Gemara says a halacha, it's not like Ashkenazim, Sfardim, this nusach, that nusach, it's a halacha in Gemara, and yet you see when it comes to Shmini Atzeres, somehow, for some reason, it got entrenched in many communities that they don't sit in the sukkah Shmini Atzeres. How did that happen? So he said once a very interesting theory. The Gemara says, Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galiyus, you have to make a shechiyanu and do all the brachas like the first day. Because if you make any change in a bracha, people are going to disregard the whole Yom Tov. He says, what's the proof that Chazal were right? Shmini Atzeres. Because Shmini Atzeres, they said, Yisuvi Yisvin and Brucha Loim Rachinon. They stopped making a bracha Leisha B'sukkah. You know what happened? The whole thing went out the window. So he says, from there you see how the Chazal were correct when it came to Yom Tov Sheni, Shel Galis. But Shmini Atzeres, you have to make a Shechianu. It's Zman. You have to make a new Shechianu. Next, Regel La'atzmai, it's a new Yom Tov. That's Reish, Pazar, She'ein Shem Chag HaSukkos Alav. The name of Sukkos is not on it. Now, it's interesting. In Masechtas Sukkah, Rashi teaches Regel B'fnei Atzmai, She'ein Yoshvim B'Sukkah. What makes Shmini Atzeres a new day is that you don't sit in a sukkah. Of course, he means you don't sit in a sukkah ideally in Eretz Yisrael. Here we sit in a sukkah mitzat tzveika d'yoyma because it may be a Shana Rabbah. But in Eretz Yisrael, where you know Shmini Atzeres for sure, ein yoshim b'sukkah. That's how Rashi teaches over there, regel b'fnei atzmai, that you don't sit. There's no chi of sukkah on Shmini Atzeres. Here Rashi teaches ein shem chag hasukkos alav, which, as Tosfos says, it means that in Yala v'Yava, in benching, you don't mention Chag HaSukkos, you mention Shmini Atzeres, and in davening, V'titen lanu Hashem Elokeinu me'edim l'simcha hagam azmanim l'sosin, you don't say Es Yom Chag HaSukkos, as you say Es Yom Shmini Atzeres HaChag HaZeh. Next. Huh? The Gemarah says you don't make a Leisha B'Sukkah, that's even in Chutzlot, but Tzveika D'Yom, you don't make a Leisha B'Sukkah. The carbon la'atzmi, the next is Kuf. She'ein karbonik Asher Yemei HaChag Sha'aparim Mismatim B'em Echad Echad, V'zeh Ein El Par Echad. All the other days of Sukkos, the bulls get lower and lower, and here it's only one par, so it's a new carbon. Next, Ushara Yom Shnei Elim V'Arba'asar Kvasim, V'zeh Ayel Echad V'zayin Kvasim, so the carbon is different. Next, Shir La'atzmai, it has its own song. Ein Shiroi Shavel Shal Sukkos Sha'omer Ala Duchim. Remember, every single day there was a huge concerto and symphony, the Beis Hamikdash, in the morning and in the afternoon when they were makriv the Karbanos Sibur. You can have up to 120 vocalists. People don't realize what used to happen. You can have up to 120 vocalists singing together with instruments during the Talmud Shel Shachem Bein HaArbayim. Yom Tov as well during the Karban Musaf, and they would sing lyrics. But we don't know there was a separate shir Shmini Atzeres v'lo nisparish lanu shira. We don't know what it was. The Gemarah in Rosh Hashanah goes through later at the end of Rosh Hashanah the shir of every day, which we do in davening. But Shmini Atzeres we don't know. Masechta Seifrim nimtze shira lam natzeach ala shminis. Next is bracha la'atzma beis mevarchen hayu es hamelech. They used to give a special bracha to the Jewish king or the king, Zeichel Chanukas Abayis Shenemar Bayoyim Hashmini Shalach Esa'am Vayavorchu Es HaMelech. When Shlomo HaMelech dedicated the first Beis HaMikdash, he dedicated it for 14 days. The Gemara says in Yuma that year they ate on Yom Kippur. The last day was Hoshana Rabbah, and Bayoyim Hashmini on the 8th day, actually Bayoyim Hashmini there means the 8th day, he sends away the nation and they bless the king. Does it mean he sent them on Shmini Atzeres? It would be strange, Mitzat Chum Yom Tov, or it means he gave them permission to leave the next day. That's already a discussion of Mefarshim. But Shmini Atzeres, they blessed the king. So Rashi says, Zeicher to that, every Shmini Atzeres, they would give a bracha to the king. So Pazar Koshev is, you have Pius is the lot for the carbon, the bull. Zman, Zayin is Shechiyanu. Reish is irregular, it's a separate Yom Tov with a separate Nusach by davening, or that you don't sit in the Sukkah. Kuf is a separate carbon, Musaf. Shin is shir, a special song, and finally Beis is a special bracha that they used to bless the king. So for 6 things, Shmini Atzeres is a separate holiday. For everything else, it's not. It's a continuation of Sukkos. For example, not doing malacha. It's a continuation of Sukkos. It's just like Sukkos. So here too, when it comes to Tashlumin, it's not those things, 6 things. You can bring the Karbanos and Shmini Atzeres. So why don't we compare Pesach to Sukkos? Because to fast, to mirubelay to fast.
What's the criteria for that they chose for that Yom Tov? The 6 things. Which of those 6 things control that?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe regel. I don't know. Could be regel. Zog the Gemarah elamai hilchas akashvei lachmana l'chag HaSukkos. If so, according to them, why does it say Chag HaSukkos? It's not for Bal Teacher, right? They don't believe in Sukkos for Bal Teacher. What is it? To compare Shavuos to Pesach. So it shouldn't have said Chag HaSukkos. Aliyah l'regel, you don't need Chag HaSukkos. It should have said Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos. So the Gemarah la'kushi l'Chag HaMatzos. Because you want to compare Sukkos to Pesach. You want to compare Pesach to Shavuos, but you also want to compare Sukkos to Pesach. Ma Chag HaMatzos ton lina, Chag HaSukkos ton lina. Pesach, there's a special din. You have to sleep over in Yerushalayim, Motzai the first day, till the morning of Chol HaMoed. You can't leave Motzai Yom Tov. Yom Tov finishes 6 o'clock p.m. and you have a big Chol HaMoed trip to Tzvas. So you want to take your family already at night? No, you had to sleep over the night till the morning of Chol Hamoed. Av Chaga Sukkos Ton Lina. Sukkos has the same halacha. You had to stay in Yerushalayim the night after Yom Tov till the morning of Chol Hamoed. Rashi says, Ton Lina Leil Choyloi Shal Moed. You can't leave, even though it's Mitzvah Yom Tov, you're allowed to travel. There's no issue of Tchum, and there's no issue of, it's already Chol Hamoed. Frag the Gemarah Rosh Hashanah, how do you know this about Pesach? The Ksiv, in Parshas Re'eh, it says about Pesach, it says, you see, if you have the psukim on the side, I'll read the whole pasuk. It speaks about the carbon Pesach. Ubishalta v'achalta b'mokem asher yivcher Adonai lehecha boy ufanisa b'boiker v'halachta lo yalech. Cook the carbon Pesach, eat it in the place that Hashem chose. In the morning, you can go to your tent. Oh, good question. Don't go home at night. Go home in the morning. So now you're asking a good question. Zok Rashi ufanisa b'boiker. B'yom tif loika makra. Really, when they makra the carbon Pesach, you daled nissen. So in the morning, when should you go? Tesvav in the morning, the first day Yom Tov, out of there. But it can't be. Why? You can't have one pasuk completely undermining the whole idea that you came to the Beis Hamikdash. You're supposed to show up on Yom Tov. If you're leaving the first thing in the morning, Alois HaShachar, I'm out. So the whole mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel is gone. You came Erev Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, you're already gone. So you have to say, what's the Panisa B'Boiker? You spend the day Yom Tov there. Don't run away that night, even though you brought your karbanis. You did everything. You're done. You came, you showed up, it's too many crowds, it's too pushy.
Which Yom Tov we talking about?
Pesach. Ubishalta, you cook the carbon Erev Yom Tov, you eat it at night. So Rashi says it can't mean in the morning you leave, because the morning you have Yom Tov. You're supposed to, first of all, there's an issue, could be an issue of Tchum Yom Tov, but even if there's no issue of Tchum Yom Tov. Okay. What? No, that's Oim Dem Tzvuf Meshtachim Revachim. I know. What? You want to know what's the source for my sentiments? I'll tell you. I didn't make it up. The Gemara there's a Yalkut Shibboini, it says, there's a story in Malachim about Nevois HaYisraeli. There was a Yid, his name was Nevois. Nevois had an extraordinary vineyard. And Achav, who was the king, fell in love with the vineyard. So he asked him to sell it to him. Nevois says, Chalilali, this is from the ancestry, I got it all the way from the times of Yeshua ben Nun, it's mamash in my family, you don't give away a chelik in Eretz Yisrael easily, even by Yovel it comes back. So Achav comes home depressed. So he had a wife who was even a bigger machshefer than him, her name was Izevel, and she asked him, why are you depressed? He said, he wants to cook the vineyard, and he can't get it. So Izevel said, I'll take care of it, and she hired false witnesses to testify that he cursed the king. So she had him murdered because he cursed the king, and then the halacha was harugei melech to the chasein lamalchus. So he inherits it. So he got the vineyard. So Leo, who was alive at the time, the prophet, approaches Achav and he tells him the three famous words: haratzachta, gam yarashta. You murder and then you're going to yarshin also. And Achav was punished horribly, and Izevel was punished even more. That's the pasuk. The Medrash in Yalkut Shemaini says that's Achav and Izevel. But why did it happen to Nevois? What happened to Nevois? So the Medrash says that Nevois had an extraordinarily beautiful voice. It's an extraordinary lesson. He had a moededike voice. And then Aliyah L'Regel was not popular. Why? Because this was the time of Malchus Yisrael. There was a split. And they didn't want the Jews to go to the Beis Hamikdash because that was under Malchus Yehuda, Malchus Beis David. So you had to have an incentive to bring Jews to Yerushalayim. People didn't want to go. Nevois used to hold a concert, Chalamoyed, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos, after Yom Tov, or middle of Yom Tov, and his voice was so unbelievable. He was the king of Jewish music, the real king of Jewish music. It attracted everybody to the concert, and people would come simply to hear Nevois. After doing this many years, Nevois said to himself, you know what, it's time for retirement. Ich mag sitzen beim Tisch auf Yom Tov. I had enough schlepping over there with all the maiselach. It's too hard. Let me stay home and do my thing and relax at home Yom Tov. So the Rabbi Shalom said, your soul came down here to be able to inspire Jews with your voice. You don't want to do it, so your mission in this world is finished. That's what the cheshbon of Nevois Israel. Somebody has a talent or a resource, they have to maximize it. So, Chavetz Chaim used to say, we say in the Shir Shel Yom, first day we're talking about Shir Shel Yom, Mi yala b'har Hashem neki chapayim avar levav asher lo noso lashav nafshi. He did not carry my soul in vain. You have a soul, you can't carry it in vain. You have my soul, he didn't carry his soul in vain. I'll call upon him. So b'meila, we have here a situation that the pasuk says ufanisa ba'boiker chalamoyed, but you have to wait over the night. That's Pesach. Huh?
Saying now only Pesach. What's about Shavuos?
You want to say?
It's Chaim has got the Shavuos. So I think if you're learning a Chag HaMatzah, so why shouldn't there be a din being at the Shavuos?
You want to say why not Shavuos? And who's? L'cha'ira Shavuos also. Ein hekesh l'mechza. L'cha'ira Shavuos too.
Because they were up all night anyway.
You mean they slept, so nobody was worried?
Okay.
You're saying they were so tired, Motzei Shavuos, nobody was going home. That's cute. L'cha'ira ein hekesh l'mechza. You're comparing Chag HaMatzah, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos. L'cha'ira Shavuos would be the same halacha. An interesting ha'ara is in Teves and other Rishonim, a very interesting ha'ara, and that is there's a halacha b'chlal. The Sifri learns out from this pasuk that when a yid brings a carbon, he has to sleep over that night. In the middle of the year, you bring a carbon, you don't run home that night. You sleep over the night, you go back the next day. If that's the case, you don't need a special pasuk, not by Pesach, not by Sukkot, because you have to bring a carbon. It's not worse than a weekday when you bring a carbon. You have to stay over the night. Oh, so the pshat is, in a case where you wouldn't bring a carbon that day, for example, your Shalmei Chagiga, you already send Erev, because remember, Shlomo, you can eat for 2 days and 1 night, so you could already be at Makriv Erev Yom Tiv. So Mela Mitzad, that halacha, you wouldn't have to stay over the night. So that's why there's a special din by Yom Tiv, despite whether you bring a carbon or not, you have to stay over the night. You don't run away right after Yom Tiv. Rebbeinu Shalom says, you come here, stay the night. Stay the night.
Good host.
Huh?
It's a good host.
A good host, yeah. A good host. Zog the Gemarah, v'tanakama v'debshimin, tashlumin la'atzeres minalu. Tanakama and Ibshimin, how do they know that Shavuos, you could be makriv the carbon for 7 days? They use Chag HaMatzos and Chag HaShavuos and Chag HaSukkos for what? For Bal Teacher. So how do you know Shavuos, you have another 6 days? You can't compare matzahs, Chag HaShavuos to Chag HaMatzos, because you need it for what? To teach me that it's 3 Yomim Tovim to be over on Bal Teacher. Now, according to the Belazar B'Reb Shimon, you don't have a problem. Why? Because he holds you learn Bal Teacher from Sukkos itself. It's Sukkos that gives you a Bal Teacher. So Chag HaShavuos and Chag HaMatzos you could use for Tashlumin. It works. But according to Reb Tanakama and Reb Shimon, you need also Chag HaMatzos and Chag HaShavuos. And for the Gemarah, Nafkulu with the Tani Rabbi Bar Shmuel. They learn it from a brisa that Rabbi the son of Shmuel taught. Fascinating brisa. The Tani Rabbi Bar Shmuel. Amra Torah, the Torah said, Minei Yomim, V'kadesh Chodesh. Count days and sanctify the new month. Meaning, count full days, either 29 days or 30 days, and the next day make Rosh Chodesh. And how do you make Rosh Chodesh? You bring special Karbonos Musaf on this day in the Beis HaMikdash. Next, Kadesh Atzeres. Minei Yomim, count 49 days, and Kadesh Atzeres. And then make holy the 50th day, which is Atzeres, called Shavuos. What do? You bring special karbonos of Re'iyah and Chagiga and the Musaf of Yom Tov, the Musaf of Shavuos. What does this mean? This means as follows. The orbit of the moon ends after 29 and a half days. Exactly, it takes 29 days, 12 hours, and Tafshin Tzaddik Gimel Chalakim, which means for 793 parts of the hour. So really, when should Rosh Chodesh be? Rosh Chodesh should happen after 29 days and 12 hours. We never do that. Why? Because we learn out from a pasuk in Bal Teacher where it says Chodesh Yomim. Chodesh Yomim. Chodesh Yomim means full days, a month of full days, a chodesh is yamim. That's why we do some months 29 days and some months 30 days. Why? If we would do all months 29 days, we would be off after a while, because it takes 29 and a half days. If we would do all months 30 days, we would be ahead. We split it up 6 and 6, ad hayom hazeh, 29 and 30. So minei yamim, you count full days, and then you make Rosh Chodesh. Minei yamim, you count 49 days, 7 weeks, and you make Shavuos. Zok de Braise, ma chodesh lemenuyev, afatzeres lemenuyev. Very interesting. Just like when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, how long is Rosh Chodesh? 1 day. We do sometimes 2 days Rosh Chodesh. We'll see later why. But min haTorah Rosh Chodesh is always 1 day. So you make Rosh Chodesh from 1 unit of the days that you were counting. You counted 29 or 30 days. You take 1 unit, and that unit becomes the holy day. You don't make Rosh Chodesh 10 days, 5 days, 4 days, 2 days. Minei Yomim v'Kadosh Chodesh. The Karbanos Rosh Chodesh is done in the unit of time that you counted up to Rosh Chodesh. You counted up Rosh Chodesh from 30 days, you take 1 day and you make Rosh Chodesh. Afatzeres lemenuyev. Shavuos is the same gather. You take the unit of time that counted up to Shavuos, and that becomes Shavuos. What was the unit of time? 7 weeks. Sheva Shabbos. So you take a week and you turn it into Shavuos. But Mela, from here you learn that you have Tashlumin for 7 days. Even though the Yom Tov Mitzad Malacha is only 1 day, but mitzad bringing the karbonis, the tashlumin, re'iyah, and chagiga, you have 7 days. Frag the Gemarah, ema atzeres chad yoyma. 1 second. Say Shavuos should only be 1 day, because the Torah also says you should count 49 days. Amarava atu atzeres yoyma manin and Shavuos loy manin. Shavuos you only count days and not weeks. So Amar Mar, the master said, mitzvah lemimne yoyma, mitzvah lemimne Shavuos. It's a mitzvah for Sfirah Soimer to count days, and it's also a mitzvah to count weeks. So you're not only counting 49 days, you're also counting 7 weeks. That's why by Sfirah Soimer we say, Hayom Shiva Yomim, Shehem, Shavua Echad Loim. It's a mitzvah lemimne yoimi, but it's also a mitzvah to count weeks. So if it's a mitzvah also to count weeks, so therefore, you can't say Shavuos is going to be 1 day like Rosh Chodesh, because the counting is also in weeks. Besides that, Chag Shavuos Ksiv. When the Torah wants to name this holiday, the Torah calls it the holiday of weeks. In other words, the name of this holiday is weeks. Why is it weeks? Because the prelude, what followed up to the Yom Tov, was the counting of weeks. But Mela, from here they learned Tashlum and Kol Shiv. Let's just see Rashi. Tanakama v'Reb Shimon the Darshile Haikra lebal ta'acher. They use this lebal ta'acher dilu Rebbe Lazar, but Reb Shimon loy kashem midi the iyu yalev bal ta'acher mechaga sukkos lichudei ayata lechaga matzah lechaga shavuos lekeshel letashlum. Rebbe Lazar is good, but the other two Tanakama and Reb Shimon, for them the whole chaga matzah chaga shavuos chaga sukkos is taken. How do you learn tashlumin by shavuos? And for the Gemara, minei yomim shenemar ad chodesh yomim. You count a month of days. V'kadosh chodesh b'karbanos. Ma chodesh kiddushay echad mimenuyav. Just like Rosh Chodesh. What day is holy? 1 unit of the what was counted. You have 29 days. So you take 1 unit and you make it holy. B'yom Rosh Chodesh hu makrivon. You can't do it the next day. You have 1 day. Zman hukvalem echad min hayamim shu nimnal yadam. The time for Rosh Chodesh is we take 1 of the units that it became through counting those units leading up to Rosh Chodesh. Afat seres havas karbonoisa be'echad miminuyah. Shavuos too, you bring the karbonis by 1 of its units. V'arehi nimnes hayidei shvu. Doesn't mean shvuayim. He means like Shavuos, and it's counted through weeks. Shenemar Sheva Shabbos is Tmimis Tiyena. So 1 unit you get 4 karbanis. So that means you have Tashlumin for 7 days. 1 second. Rosh Chodesh you count 30 days. Here you count 50 days, 49 days, 2 days. So Shavuos should be 1 unit. 1 unit is 1 day. So 1 day you have. So this Rava says no, because it's supposed to count weeks, and it's called Chag HaShavuos. That means that's the primary element of Shavuos, and b'meila you have to count Sayomis. Shavuos b'meila you learn from it that you have Tashlumin Kol Shiv. It's interesting. There's a big machlokes in Rishonim if Sfirah Soimer today is the Rabbanim and Atayra to machlokes in the Rambam and Tosfos. Rambam holds in Atayra today, and even though there's no carbon name, and Tosfos holds that it's only midirabbanan because it says "Usfartim lechem machlis haShabbos miyoyim haviyachim as omer hatnufa sheva shabbosos emes tiyena." You don't bring an omer hatnufa, so the Rambam holds it's the day that you bring. Tosfos holds no, you need a carbon, and without that it's only midirabbanan. That's why we say harayim. Rabbeinu Yeruchim has a very novel shita. He says that counting days today is min haTorah. Counting days is min haTorah. Counting weeks is only midrabanan. Why? Because he says there's two separate psukim. One pasuk brings Firas Saimer in Parshas Rein. It says mehachal chermes bakarma on this particular day tisperu chamishim yom. You should count 50 days. So that's min haTorah. The other pasuk says, "Asfartim lechem machas Shabbos beyoyim aviyachem esomer atnuf sheva Shabbos et mimis tiyena." Shavuos is totally in the carbon. So he says that today counting weeks is takem d'Rabbanan, not min haTorah. Counting days is min haTorah. In other words, the chiddush of Shavuos is when Yitaka had a real Shavuos based on the counting. Like him was mamish only with weeks, because with weeks it's takem min haTorah because you need a carbon name. Al kol panim, that's why they know tashlumin. And you don't need Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos, you could go for Bal Teacher. So the last piece of the Gemara here, mamash the last piece, after the Gemara finished and concluded analyzing the background, the logic behind each of the 5 Tanoim of what their opinion with Bal Teacher is, according to Tanakama, when you make your pledge and 3 Yomim Tovim pass in any order, you transgress Bal Teacher. According to Reb Shimon by Yechai, it has to be in the order of Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos. According to Reb Meir, the third opinion, any Yom Tif, one Yom Tif is Bal Teacher, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos. According to Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov, the fourth opinion, 2 Yomim Tovim, any 2. And finally, the last opinion was Reb Elazar, the son of Reb Shimon ben Yechai, who says Sukkos, it's only Sukkos. Sukkos is what creates Bal Teacher. So it's one Yom Tif, but one particular Yom Tif, which is Sukkos. The Gemara went in to analyze the background, the logic, where each one derives, from whence each one derives his particular view about Bal Teacher. And the final discussion was that many of the shittas use that pasuk of Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos, and Parshas Re'eh, which is superfluous when it comes to tell us about Aliyah L'Regel, because we know already from the whole context that these are the 3 Yomim Tovim. So they learn the first 2 views that this is the source of Bal Teacher for Shalosh Regalim. And finally, in the last piece, the Gemara says that l'cha'ira, how do they know? A very big chiddush that Shavuos you have 6 days to be mashlim, 7 what we call Shivas Yemei Tashlumim, together with Shavuos, and another 6 days afterwards to bring your carbon, which l'cha'ira we learned. The Reb Meir, Reb Eliezer ben Yaakov learned that all from Chag HaMatzos and Chag HaShavuos, which the other ones use it for Bal Teacher, so this halacha would be missing. So the Gemara finally said that this particular halacha they learned out from another source, and the source is that they compare the concept of Shavuos to the concept of Rosh Chodesh. Just like Rosh Chodesh is one day, and how do you create Rosh Chodesh? There's no Rosh Chodesh if you didn't count before 29 or sometimes 30 days. Because the definition of Rosh Chodesh is that the moon completed its orbit around the earth and a new orbit is about to begin. So for this you have to count all the day, the span of time during the orbit, of that orbit. And the span of time is always 29 and a half days. So you count either 29 days or 30 days and you make your Rosh Chodesh. And that means that the way we understand Rosh Chodesh is that the day in which you'll bring your karbonos of Rosh Chodesh, the special karbonos of Rosh Chodesh, is one day which is 1 unit of the count. You count it 29 days. You take 1 unit of that count and you designate it as the day of karbonos. So when it comes to Shavuos, which is also based on counting, other Yomim Tovim is not based on counting. I can't say this about other Yomim Tovim. Sukkos is not based on counting. You don't have to count days to come to Sukkos. You have to know when the 15th day of the month is. I mean, yeah, you have to count from day 1 to day 15, but it's not like it's totally in count. If you don't count, Sukkos is the 15th day of Sukkos. Shabbos is the 7th day of the week. Rosh Chodesh is based on the count of the 29, 30 days. Shavuos is based on the count of what? Of 49 days, 7 weeks. And the day of Shavuos you bring your carbon. So we say, just like Rosh Chodesh, the day that you bring your carbon is 1 unit of the count. Shavuos, the time that you bring your carbon, is 1 unit of the count. The count is 7 weeks. So 1 unit is a week. So this means that you could bring your carbonus of Shavuos for a week, for 7 days. How? Shavuos is only 1 day. The answer is because there is tashlum. On this, the Gemara asked, 1 second. But you're also counting 49 days. You're not only counting 7 weeks. You're counting 49 days. Tispiru, chamishim yoyim. So if so, you can argue that Shavuos, you should only be able to bring the carbon 1 day, because take 1 unit of the count. On this, Rava said, 1 second. You're right, we count days, but we also have to count weeks. Mitzvah lemimni yoimi and mitzvah lemimni shavui. So you can't ignore the unit of weeks. That is intrinsic to the mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer. You have to count the weeks. Besides that, the Torah calls it Chag HaShavuos. The Torah could have called it Chag HaYomim. Torah knows that you count days. He calls it Chag HaShavuos. In other words, the primary minyan, the primary count that creates the chalois of Shavuos, what we call Shavuos. Shavuos means weeks. Why is it called weeks? It's called days. It should be called days. It comes from days just like weeks. 49 days is not only 7 weeks. Is the chapraya that the primary heftzah, mitzias of Shavuos and halacha is based on the unit of weeks. And hence, from here they learn the source of tashlum.
What's the point of the second thing?
What?
What's the point of the second thing? The first right wasn't enough.
You say, what's wrong with the first answer? Why does the
Is
Gemara
there-
have to
is
give
there
a
a
oit?
problem, or-
It's a good question you ask. Why do you need a second answer? When you need a second answer, it means the first answer is not wholesome. So the emes is, you can ask here a good question, an interesting question, what the Gemara says before. Tafasta meruba loy tafasta, tafasta mua tafasta. When we were thinking, how many days should we give Shavuos? 7 or 8? Compared to Sukkot, compared to Pesach. We said, you don't know. If you don't know, go less, don't go more. Huh? Minimize, don't maximize, because if you maximize, you may be lifting up weights that are too heavy for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
Minimize and you're safe.
If you want to compare it to another yontif, there's no other yontif that has no tashlum. You're busy comparing it to another yontif. The question is 7.
Pesach or Sukkot. So you say there.
Say nothing. One is going to be.
No, so l'chayre, if you say tafasta meruba loy tafasta, so then you should say there should be tashlumim for Shavuos 1 day. There should be tashlumim for Shavuos 1 day. Why are we saying tafasta meruba? That you go, in other words, you could count days and you could count weeks. So now I have a question about Shavuos. Does Shavuos have tashlum in a whole week, or maybe not? So give tashlum in 1 day.
An extra day?
Give tashlum in 1 day.
49. According to
Based on
49
days, give it 1 day. If you want to give tashlum. Why do you say tafasta meruba here with the chayre? It's tafasta meruba. That could be a question. So Tosfos asks this question. The long Tosfos asks this question, and Tosfos says you have to be consistent. When it comes to Rosh Chodesh, you're comparing Shavuos to Rosh Chodesh. When it comes to Rosh Chodesh, the day of Rosh Chodesh gets holy, and it encompasses the entire unit that was counted, which is days. So he says Shavuos do the same thing. Use the entire unit that was counted, not only days but also weeks. It's not the fasta merubah. But the Ritva says that's why you need a second answer. So V'oid Chag HaShavuos ksiv, because it says Chag HaShavuos, therefore the fasta merubah. Because the first answer you'll say, go with days, don't go with weeks. Because the Torah calls it Chag HaShavuos. Why does the Torah call it Chag HaShavuos? To tell you this is a holiday of weeks, and to teach you the din of tashlumim. There's another third answer that's given by the Ran. The Ran gives a third answer, and he says, when do you say tafasta merubah loy tafasta? Is if you're going to learn from the merubah, so then you can't learn from the mu'at. You have to make a choice. Either you're going to learn from the merubah, or you're going to learn from the mu'at. But here,
In the chesed of Yesh B'chal Mona Mosayim?
no, he says, here, what are you going to do? He says, here you can learn from both. You could say, the main Shavuos is 1 day, and then the Tashlumim is 7 days. So you don't have to choose one or the other. If you have to choose one or the other as an alternative, then I say, take the Mu'ah, don't take the Merubah. He says, here, do both. Do both. Learn Sai Yamim and Sai Shavuos. The main day of the carbon is Shavuos itself. That's only one day. So that's the Tafasta Mu'at. And then give me another 6 days because of the unit of weeks. It's Tafasta Merubah.
It tells you to do it. That's not the faster. There's no faster.
He says you don't have to do either or. You could do
What I'm
both.
saying, but you're using the faster on the Ikad the Raisa of it on one day. There's not the faster there. But the faster is there on Chag HaShuas. You need that.
No, I'm saying that's like Rish Chodesh. That would be like Rish Chodesh. You have one day.
Right, but there's no the faster. You do two fasters.
Right. And yeah, in other words, it's just you embrace both. You embrace both. So maybe you don't have to choose. Since you don't have to choose, you could say both. There's 2 units. You don't have to ignore either. If you have to ignore one, so which one do you choose? So you choose the minimal one. Since you don't have to choose either or, you don't have to choose. You have Yomim and you have Shavuos. You're paying respect to Yomim. You have Shavuos, just like Rosh Chodesh, Shavuos. You're paying respect to Shavuos. You have another 6 days it works. The Rashash, already in we come to the Achronim, says a Geschmack of art. He says, why don't you say, according to them, there should be Tashlumin, not just for the carbon, Oilas Re'iyah, and Shalmei Chagiga that you have to bring Shavuos. There should be Tashlumin for the Karbanos Musafin that you bring on Shavuos. The Karbanos Tzibur that you bring every Yom Tif, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Shavuos, all the Yom Tovim, the special Karbanos that we daven Musaf for. The lists of Karbanos that we do in Musaf, which are the extra Karbanos besides the Karban Tamid that we bring on special days, Shabbos, all the Yom Tovim, and Rosh Chodesh. That's why we daven Musaf in all these days. Those Karbanos, there's no Tashlumin. Why not? Rosh Chodesh, you can bring it to Rosh Chodesh. What are the Karbanos of Rosh Chodesh that you're talking about? Karbanos Musaf. Rosh Chodesh didn't bring an Oilas Re'iyah and Shalmei Chagiga. There's no Aliyah regular Rosh Chodesh. The Karbanos Musaf. You want to go really do this? Say fine. Just like Rosh Chodesh. You do one day. And that's the time you bring which Karbanos? Karbanos Musaf. So Shavuos you do 1 week. Really? So give me a week for Karbanos Musaf? That doesn't exist. The week is only for the personal Karbanos. He says, how did that happen? He says,
It comes from Pesach and Sukkot. You only do the personal Karbanos.
Cannot be better than Pesach and Sukkot.
well,
Give you more than
well,
that.
every day is a new Musaf. I mean, every day is a new Karban Musaf.
But you're not. But if you miss it,
You miss it.
If you miss it, you miss it. The next day is a new Karban
Rosh
Musaf.
Chodesh is not a Teshlumin.
Huh?
Rosh Chodesh itself is not a Teshlumin.
But if you're telling me that the chalois of Karbanos of Shavuos is 7 days just like Rosh Chodesh, so be consistent. So he says, that's the Mitzvah L'Mimnei Yomi and Mitzvah L'Mimnei Shavuot. Mitzad Yomi, that's the Karban Musaf, it's only 1 day. Mitzad Shavuos, it's the other Karbanos. That's why there's a distinction. Mitzad the Yoimim,
the Musaf is always specific to
for the
that.
Yoim. And the personal Karbanos they have to bring on Shavuos, that would be where the Shavuos come out. That's why you don't say that Atzeres has Tashlumim Kol Shiva even for the Karbanos Musafim. So therefore we learn from both. We use the Yomim and we use the Shavuos. What of us we use? The Karbanos Musafim you have to bring on 1 day because of the unit of days, just like Rosh Chodesh. And the Karbanos Re'iyah and Chagiga you could
But
bring
that's- I mean,
for
it's
7
also, don't
days.
forget, Karban Musaf is a Chodesh Tzibur.
Right.
A Chodesh Yochid. Other Karbanos is
Right,
Chodesh
of course, yeah.
So you can't.
You're not
if I
responsible.
forgot, I'm not Mechayev Tzibur to do it. Give me Mechayev.
No, in other words, if the Tzibur, if
It's the
they
whole Tzibur.
didn't bring, they did the first day of Shavuos, they didn't do it. For whatever reason.
Imagine Chanukah the next day after Shavuos.
Huh? No, Chanukah, there were no Karbanos.
No.
Chanukah is B'drabanan. Chanukah, there's no Karbanos.
No, I say, if you
You
have...
can't bring Karbanos
If
on Chanukah.
Chanukah will happen the
Chol
next day
Bazar.
after Shavuos,
Oh,
if something
That's
like
what you
this,
mean. Right.
the Bet HaMikdash was closed because of the...
right. Oh, that's what you mean.
Command.
It's not so clear because
You
No,
mean
because of
something
the-
happened like
something
Chanukah?
happened like
I thought
Chanukah.
you meant Chanukah.
No, something happened like Chanukah and the next day after
it's not so
Shavuos.
clear because the mitzvah meaning Yom means you want to give
Sorry.
a shlumah of 1 day. And he's saying you're not even going to you're just being marked of 1 day.
Under
You want to
construction.
No, well,
You have to shlumah of 1 day.
you don't need Tashlumin. Rosh Chodesh is not Tashlumin.
Right, but you want it that the Gabe Shvu is the mitzvah means
And you finish on time.
Shvu is because you want is you comparing to the Chodesh. But what do you? So you should compare to the Chodesh mitzvah that you at least have to shlumah for 1 day. Now you're saying you're not.
No, Rosh Chodesh you don't have Tashlumin.
Shtay, like you mark your mitzvah for 1 day.
Yeah.
The mitzvah.
Just like Rosh Chodesh. You're right. No Tashlumin. You're right. The Yoime creates 1 day of Yom Tif, 1 day for Karbanos, like Rosh Chodesh. That's the Karbanos Musaf. And the Shavuos. Now, why do I choose this versus this? We understand. Because this is a Karban Sibur. So if you're going to choose which one can go for 6 days and which one doesn't, the Karban Sibur that the whole Klal Yisrael brings,
It's thousands and thousands of.
That's the point. Here you only need one, it's only one carbon musaf. It's not every individual. So who should you give 6 days? Should you give 6 days for one carbon? Or should you give 6 days for one carbon and 1 day for thousands and thousands of carbonas? Or should you give 1 day for one carbon and then 6 days for thousands and thousands and thousands of carbonas? So obviously that's how you would divide it. Sai mitzad practical reasons and also mitzad the teuchen.
Theologically, it makes more sense.
Practically balabatish. You give more time to things that take more time, right? That's what the time management gurus say. Okay, Zog the Gemarah weiter. On the bottom of Daf Daled Amud Aleph, the Gemarah listed the big Tanur Rabbanon, what goes into the umbrella of Bal Teacher. So we went through a long list. The basic list included, if you take a look at the last lines of Daf Daled Amud Aleph, just let's go through the list fast, because we're now going to analyze that whole list. The first thing was Damin, Erkin, Chramin, Hekdeshes, Chatoyes, Hashamas, Oilus, Shlomim, Tzedakos, Meisters, Bchor, Meiser, Pesach, and then the Avdalad Amid Beis was Leket, Shikha, and Peah, and that's where the list ends. When 3 Yomim Tovim pass, you're over on Bal Teacher. Where did we come up with this list from? It's a Braisa. But let's now analyze this list. What's included in this list? The list included, the first thing is a pledge that a person makes when he says, my value, I have to give to the Beis HaMikdash. So if a person, so to speak, is worth on the market $10 million, he has to give $10 million to the Beis HaMikdash. The second thing was Erkin, which means my Erech, which is always a fixed value based on gender and age, and not so much money, you have to give to the Beis HaMikdash. The third thing is Chramin, which is you're Makdash something to the Beis HaMikdash. The next is Hekdeshes, which you take Pashat an object, and you say it's Hekdash. Whether it's an animal, whether it's an item, and you say it's Hekdash. Well, it's not an animal usually. It's an item that, it could be an animal, even an animal that you're not makriv, but it's the value of something you give to the Beis HaMikdash. Chram, you say hareza cherem, so it's a form of hekdesh. It's a sanctification. Yeah. And then you have karbonis, achatos, an asham, an oil, shlamim, all these things. Then you have tzedakah, he said. You make a pledge for poor people. Then you have all your maisris, your truma, your maiser rishon, your maiser sheni, your maiser ani that you separate. Then you have your carbon b'chayr, that you have to give to the kohen. Then you have your carbon meiser that you have to bring to your shalayim and eat yourself as a carbon. Then you have your carbon pesach, and then you have your leket, shikha, and peah, which are the various contributions you have to give from your field, things that you leave in the field, and if you leave it in the field, there's no Bal Teacher. You take it home in order to give it to the poor people. All these things have this time limit of Bal Teacher. You can't just leave it in your house for 20 years and then decide to give it to the kohen, or give it to the poor man, or give it to the Beis HaMikdash, right? Even though the watch is fine after 20 years, you have to do it within the period of Bal Teacher, which we explained is either Yom Yom Tov, 3 Yomim Tovim, 2 Yomim Tovim, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos, in the order, not in the order, all the 5 opinions discussed. The big problem here is carbon Pesach. Everything else, the question is how we come to it. That we'll get soon. But Pesach, it's not only a question how we come to it, but it doesn't make sense. Let's think about it. What's a carbon Pesach? Carbon Pesach means on your Daled Nissen, Erev Pesach, you had to bring a carbon Pesach. So what's Bal Teacher? If you didn't bring it, you Daled Nissen. So what happens now? So you're supposed to bring your carbon Pesach in the middle of Sukkot?
Pesach Sheni.
Huh?
Pesach Sheni.
Okay, so Pesach Sheni. So now if Pesach Sheni passes,
It would be impossible for Bal Teacher.
what's the Bal Teacher?
There's no Yom Tovim.
Huh?
It would be impossible for Bal Teacher.
Between Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni, and we have no Yom Tov. That's what the Gemara is now going to. In other words, the question is not the source. The question is Pashat the Upikataj. What's Pirush Hamilas? First, you have to, before you analyze sources, you have to analyze Pirush Hamilas. Pirush Hamilas doesn't make sense. Soon we'll get to the source of each one. How we know Bal Teacher includes all of them. The pasuk just says a neder. But first we should have to understand what it means. That's what the Gemara addresses now. Zog the Gemara after the period. Chag Shavuos Ksiv. O Pesach bar mikriv b'regolim hu. You see how the Gemara asks the question. Is Pesach something that you could be makriv b'regolim in the Yomim Tovim? That you tell me, if you didn't bring a carbon Pesach, so you have Pesach, you have Shavuos, you have Sukkos, and then after Sukkos, it's over. Bal Teacher, you delayed it too much. Is Pesach something you can be makriv b'regolim? Pesach zimne kvile. Pesach has a fixed time, the 14th day of Nisan, in the afternoon, Erev Pesach. Vi akreve akreve. And if you offered it then, you were makriv it, you offered it. You did halach, vi lo akreve. And if you didn't offer it, itchile. It gets rejected from being it makriv as a carbon Pesach. You can't be makriv as a carbon Pesach anymore. This is the time. Now we'll soon see what happens in such a situation. But you can't be makriv as a carbon Pesach. So if so, what is the definition of Bal Teacher in this case. You can't do it anymore. Now, the way this is explained practically speaking is, you can't leave it till the next Pesach. You say leave it till the next Pesach. Leave it till the next Pesach and bring it.
If you are Magdish.
Yeah. The problem is that the Torah says in Boy that it has to be Seh ben Shana. It has to be a sheep within the first year. So if you get your sheep right before Pesach, Erev Pesach, by the time the next Erev Pesach comes up, this is already disqualified as a Korban Pesach.
Redeem it.
One moment. So therefore, if this is a situation, what are you supposed to do with it? So he says, it's nitche from being makar b'shem Pesach. Another way of learning it is, besides the problem of the the Turei Even writes here, that the pshat is Bal Teacher means that even though it's delayed, you could still bring it. It's just you're bringing it late. Sometimes you make a late payment, but the payment is a payment. It's just a late payment. So maybe you'll get a penalty. Maybe you have to pay a fee, but it's a payment. Bal Teacher l'shalmei means don't delay paying it. But you could pay it after it's delayed. It's just don't delay it. It's a kosher carbon. You're just not allowed to delay it. Here, you can't bring the Korban Pesach. Yeah, so the whole mitzvah of Bal Teacher, he says, doesn't apply. Zog the Gemarah Amar Reb Chizda, you're right. You're right. Pesach kedin asva, which means Reb Chizda says Pesach doesn't belong here. It doesn't have the same din like the other karbanos. So why does it come in here? The only reason is because generally in Shas, B'chor, Meiser, and Pesach are grouped together, are fixed together. So Reb Chizda, who interprets Pesach literally, says you have a problem here. Because the Bal Teacher of Pesach is not like the Bal Teacher everywhere else. Now, Reb Chizda doesn't mean that the Tana is saying something wrong. Just because Pesach comes usually with B'chor and Meiser, you can't put it into a brisa where you're going to give a wrong halacha about Pesach. Pesach, Bal Teacher is right away. The moment Pesach comes, the first day of Pesach comes, you oiv it on Bal Teacher. Because you have to bring it out of Pesach. So it's not like he's giving you a wrong impression that from the brisa, something bad is going to come out, that you're going to think Pesach is Bal Teacher, and really Pesach is not Bal Teacher. Pesach is much more stringent. The Bal Teacher starts right away. Erev Pesach is the time limit. Pesach comes, there's nothing to do anymore. The Korban Pesach is Erev Pesach. He can't bring it on Pesach. Wait till the next Erev Pesach. It's already a year. So B'meila, the only reason he groups it into the brisa is Kedin Asva. Kedin Asva means it's Derech Agav. What says it's Derech Agav? Since usually we group together B'chor, Meiser, Pesach, they come together like we say in the morning, before Hoyd, before Shachris, in the Karbonos, HaB'chor, HaMeiser, HaPesach, Kachim Kalim, Shchasim B'chol Makom Ba'azora. They usually work together, they're like in one umbrella, a lot of halachas they share, so here it also comes in together, even though specifically, you don't have this Bal Teacher of 3 Yom Tovim, Bal Teacher happens right away. Or it doesn't happen b'chlal, the concept of Bal Teacher doesn't apply. You have to bring it, but the concept of Bal Teacher doesn't apply, that's the Turei Even learns. Reb Sheshes says no. Obviously, this is not a geschmacka way of learning it, but for this, he will reinterpret the word. My Pesach, Shalmei Pesach. Pesach doesn't mean the Korban Pesach, it means Shalmei Pesach. What's Shalmei Pesach? Rashi says, B'shaloi karav bismanai. You have a Korban Pesach and you couldn't bring it in its time. You know why? Sha'avad, it got lost. You took a sheep or a goat, you were makdash it as a Korban Pesach, and you got lost, ran away. V'neschaper ba'aches, you brought a new one. And now you find the old one. What do you do? What do you do with the old one? So you can't bring it as a Korban Pesach. You already brought a Korban Pesach. So hunasa shlomim, it becomes automatically a Korban Shlom. Kedenaf kolam b'psachim. Va'oison shlomim im echaron gimel regalim over. For that new Korban Shlomim, you have 3 Yomim Tovim. So when it says Pesach, it doesn't mean the Korban Pesach. It means Shalmei Pesach. It means the Shlomim in lieu of the Korban Pesach. On this Tana you have, on this Korban you have 3 Yomim Tovim. And the reason again is because you found it after you were makar of the. If you found it before you were makar of another Korban Pesach, great, you have a Korban Pesach. You found it after you were makar of the Korban Pesach, so therefore you cannot be makar as a Korban Pesach. The din is you have to be makar as a Korban Shlomim. This Korban goes into Bal Teacher. So Reb Chizda and Reb Sheshes both agree that the classic Korban Pesach doesn't fall into the regular category of Bal Teacher.
What's the difference if you find it or not? Because the first of those,
Whenever.
Korban Pesach, you've set aside another Korban Pesach already.
Yes.
Even if you find it before you makar.
Yes.
Which one you makar.
Right, yeah.
So one or the other, you're going to have a...
One or the other, yeah. So both hold that the classic Korban Pesach, there's no Bal Teacher. The question is, when it says Pesach, what does it mean? Reb Sheshes says it means he just puts it into the group Kedinos v'derech hagav, but it has its own halachas. It has its own halachas. You can't delay it even a night. Already a few hours passed, it's over. Time done. Reb Sheshes says no. You're right about the real carbon. This doesn't mean the classic Pesach. It means Shalmi Pesach. Frag the Gemarah Hachi Einu Shlamim. If Reb Sheshes was right, it says in the same brayse Shlamim. And Avdalad Amar Aleph, when he brought the brayse, Chatoyes v'Hashamas Oilus Shlamim before Pesach. According to you, it's a Shlamim, so it's superfluous because your Pesach is also Shlamim. And for the Gemara, Tana Shlamim Abayim Machmas Pesach, v'Tana Shlamim Abayim Machmas Atzma. When it says Pesach, it's talking about Shlamim that are coming because of Pesach. In other words, they were first a carbon Pesach. They were sanctified. It's an animal that was sanctified as a carbon Pesach, and later it became Shlamim due to unforeseen circumstances. When it says Shlamim, you're talking about Shlamim that were sanctified initially as a carbon Shlamim. You're going to ask, who cares what type of Shlamim it is? It's still redundant. Sol kadaita chamina. I would have thought it would have come up in my mind. Just the translation of the word. Solka means come up. Daita on the mind. Amina, I would say. Sol kadaita chamina. It would come up in my mind to say. It would be a svara to say. Hoyelamachmas pesach chasu. Since these shlamim are coming because of Pesach, in other words, l'chatchila was a Pesach, and then it's transferred to shlamim ke Pesach damu. So therefore, it retains this halachic status of Pesach. In what sense? Rashi says, "Ubil regel rishon yaver alei." In the first Rashi of Hamad Beis. So already the first Yom Tov you're over. When? The moment the Yom Tov comes in. The carbon Pesach you have erev Pesach. The moment the night of the Seder comes in, you're already over a Bal Teacher. Because it's too late. What are you going to do on Pesach? You can't bring a carbon Pesach on the first day of Pesach. So you over a Bal Teacher. So b'meila you would think the Shlamim has the same gather. So therefore, we say no. Shlamim has a regular gather of Bal Teacher. We have your 3 Yom Tovim, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos, according to each opinion of when Bal Teacher
I thought you
goes.
can bring Shlamim on Erev Pesach. They don't let people regular korbanot on Erev Pesach.
But on Pesach. At least on Pesach.
Pesach.
Yeah, the Yom Tov shouldn't pass. At least the Yom Tov shouldn't pass.
So much Rashi is Chaper. Very It's Chaper is in Pesach is Chaper or something?
You mean on Amid Aleph?
Yeah, the Chaper is man shop in a Chaper ba'acha. It's killing. From Pesach is Chaper or something. Usually you get Rosh Hashanah, you don't use on the Chaper or something.
That's an interesting diuk. Why it's called Neschaper. You see, Rashi says, "Bizman Shavad v'Neschaper ba'acher." L'chayre, you're saying it's not a kapara. You're saying it's not a kapara. Carbon Pesach is not a kapara. Why Rashi says Neschaper? Interesting. I don't know. It's a good diuk. Now you're being like the Rashash. A guy sagrad, the Rashash, the stuff me haben a breitkeit. You're saying why it says Neschaper. It's a good diuk. I don't know. Now here's just a diuk of the Sfasemes that somebody mentioned. It's just important to note. When Rashi says you're over on Bal Teacher right away, once Erev Pesach passed, you're over on Bal Teacher, it's only if the carbon is not royu to bring on Pesach Sheni. If it's in a situation that you could bring it on Pesach Sheni, it's a matzav that the person is royu to bring it on Pesach Sheni, he was b'derech rechaika, whatever the halach is, how you can bring it on Pesach Sheni, so then you won't be over on Bal Teacher when you weren't makavit on Pesach Rishon, but right with Pesach Sheni you'll be over on Bal Teacher, because after Pesach Sheni, what are you doing with it? So that's such an important thing. Sometimes you have a month. It still doesn't go into the regular Bal Teachers. It's not Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos, it's not Shavuos. You don't even wait Yom, even according to the Meir. But even if it's no Pesach Sheni, you're over on Bal Teacher right when Yom Tov comes in. If it's Pesach Sheni, so you have 1 more month for Bal Teacher, but it still doesn't go into the regular umbrella of Bal Teacher unless you're dealing with the Shlom.
If Pesach has Bal Teacher right away, so Mehechet Pesach to learn all the Lamudim. Why don't we just learn out from Pesach? Then you're right away. Mehechet Pesach to learn all the Lamudim. You see that Bal Teacher you're over by Pesach right away. So why did all the Madam learn all the halachas?
No, you can't compare. Pesach, you're over right away if you say you're over because it has a fixed zman. When I bring a neder, I say I want to bring a carbon oil to the Beis Hamikdash, right? Mehechatesa to say that I have literally till Shkia, till sunset, and that's Ichur. I could say it, but I need a raya for this. So that's why we use the psukim of Chag HaMatzos, Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos, according to that shitta, or we use the psukim of Ubasa Shama V'Havesim, or we use the psukim of Eila Tasul Hashem B'Mayadechem. Mehechatesa to say, Pesach, I have no choice. After Shkia Sachama, what are you supposed to do with your carbon Pesach? You don't bring a carbon Pesach on Lag Boimer. You don't bring a carbon Pesach on Yud Beis Tammuz or on Tisha B'Av. There's nothing to do with it. I can't wait till the next Erev Pesach. Why? Because it's already Seb and Shana. So that's out. So what am I supposed to do? I can't shake a lulav. Yeah, on Shavuos. It's not gonna. It's a nice thing to shake a lulav, but it's not for Shavuos. You don't blow shayf on Purim. What are you gonna do with your carbon? It's a carbon Pesach. It has a time, right? I mean, you understand what I'm saying? That's one oifen. As I said, the Turei Even has a different mahalach in the morning. He says there is no Bal Teacher by Pesach. It's not a gedder of Bal Teacher means when you pay your mortgage late, 3 months, like gonna give them a few years, or you don't pay it b'chlal, yeah? When you finally pay, it's a getzalt. The gelt is gelt. You just get a penalty. It's a Bal Teacher means don't delay it. If you delay it, it's still money. It's just you did it too late. Asa b'chlal nish ken gelt. It's garnished. It's not Bal Teacher. That's what the Turei Even learns. Chal no Bal Teacher. It's a different mahalach. You're not over on Bal Teacher by Pesach. There's no carbon. Done. Fafalin. Ava yoyme batal carbon. It's a different way of learning the Gemara.
Bal Teacher, we're saying anything that you pay late is Bal Teacher.
Lahavdil. I meant lahavdil. I didn't mean it.
No, I don't mean anything in another context. In this context, if you pay the current Pesach, it's not. The Bal Teacher was about an double.
That's what we're going to analyze now.
It's not about a current Pesach.
It's not about carbon. It says about a neder. That's what we're going to analyze right now. Next shtickle Gemara. Minan Emili. How do we know? How do we know what? Rashi says the kakol hanach the tanya b'masnisa le'el ika Bal Teacher. We made a grouping, a large grouping, and we put in a lot of stuff there. We put in all types of nedarim. We put in oilas, chatoyas, ashamas, pchor, maisa, pesach, tzedakah, trumas. We put in everything. We put in everything there, basically. Almost everything goes in the Bal Teacher. Where did the Chazal come up with this? You go back to the original pasuk. The original pasuk tells you something specific, and yet they expanded it to include so many things. The pasuk doesn't say a carbon, for example. The pasuk doesn't say tzedakah. The pasuk doesn't say maisris. The pasuk doesn't say erkin chrem. And let's see what the pasuk says, and let's see what they did with this. Minan Emil. The Tanur Rabbanan on this, there's a braysa, and here we have to quote the whole pasuk, and it's important because we're going to analyze word for word this pasuk. As we mentioned, the pasuk is in Dvarim, Perik Chav Gimel, pasuk Chav Beis. Let's quote the whole pasuk. If you have the psukim on the left side or the right side of your page, Torah Or Hashalom, they have today. A lot of Gemaras have the full psukim, but I'll read it inside. Ki sidor neder ladinoya loyhecha loy sa'acher l'shalmoi. Ki dorish yidrishenu adinoya loyhecha me'imach v'hoya v'chachet. Translate. When you make a pledge, you make a neder for Hashem, your God, don't delay to pay it, because God, your God, will demand it from you, and it will create in you a sin. Now here we have a classic situation of what we discussed. You have a pasuk. It's brief, it's concise. Look what Moshe Rabbeinu put in to this pasuk. When you read the pasuk, you right away hear that he put in a lot of things. He says, when you make a neder, when you noider a neder to God, your God, don't delay paying it, which is already fine. I got it. Don't delay. I have to know what it means to delay. I don't know what delay is. That's what we discussed earlier. And then he continued. Why? Because God, your God, will demand it from you, and then there will be a sin in you. So here you have a pasuk. But this pasuk, as we discussed, included a long shir. What's the shir? The shir that Moshe Rabbeinu gave, that the pasuk simply captures. So now we have Chazaras Hashir. Torah Shabbat Peh is what we call in yeshivas Chazaras Hashir. Zog the Gemarah, Tanur Rabbanan. Kisidr neder. Ein li ela neder. If you read this pasuk, you mentioned this, it's only a neder. If you make a neder, you have a mitzvah not to delay it. What if you do a nedava? Nedava. What if it's a nedava? And we know the difference of neder and nedava, and this is an important distinction. Neder means you make a pledge. Harei alai, for example. Harei alai shlamim. There's an obligation on me to bring a shlamim. You didn't take an animal and turn it into a shlamim. It's an obligation on you. Harei alai shlamim. What does this mean practically? It means two things. First of all, there's no animal yet. Second of all, if you take an animal and you make it a shlamim, and then it gets lost, you have to bring another one. Why? Because you said harei alai shlamim, and you never brought your shlamim. Right. Where's the Bal Teacher? This is neder. Where's the Bal Teacher by neder? Two things. First of all, if I made my animal a shlamim, but I don't bring it to the Beis HaMikdash, so I never fulfilled it all the way. I did step one, not step two. Or I say harei alai shlamim. I'm never even makdish a behemoth for shlamim. It's two stages. Nedava is different. Nedava, you took an animal, you say harei zu shlamim, not harei alai. If it gets lost, I'm good. I didn't violate I never said I'm going to bring a shlamim. I said this is a shlamim. Find it. I don't have to bring another one. Find it. If I find it, it's a shlamim. I don't find it. I didn't violate my neder.
You didn't lose it, and you still have it. You have to bring it.
Of course. There, what's the Bal Teacher? The Bal Teacher is I have to bring it. Just saying harezu shlamim doesn't mean anything. It's a shlamim. I have to bring it. So how do you know? It says neder. How do you know nedava? Rashi says neder nedava neder harei alai nedava harei zu. That's the key. Harei alai means it's an obligation on me. Harei zu is this animal is a shlamim, and if this one is lost, I'm fine. That's the difference between neder and nedava. So if somebody steals it, for example, by neder I have to go buy a new animal. Why? Because as long as I didn't bring it to the Beis HaMikdash, I was not mekayim my neder. By a nedava, if somebody steals it or it gets lost, I don't have to bring another one. Why? Because my obligation is to bring this as a carbon. Somebody stole it. What am I supposed to do? I'm not a prophet. I don't know who the Ganav is. What am I supposed to do? So therefore, I'm exempt. How do I know that by Nedava there's a din of Bal Teacher? Zog the Gemarah, you're right. Nemar kan neder v'nemar lahalon im neder oy Nedava zevach karbana. You have in Parshas Sav when it comes to the din of noiser, leftover meat from the carbon which you have to burn. So it says im neder oy Nedava zevach karbana. So therefore, we make what's called a Gzeir Shava. So you know Gzeir Shava is the second one of the 13 formulas, methodologies that Moshe Rabbeinu gave to the Jewish people in order to be able to interpret the psukim of Torah when you have to interpret them. For example, here you have a question. Does Nedava fall into it or not? So Chazal used the Gzeir Shava and they said neder, neder. It says neder here, kisidor neder. And remember the word neder is superfluous. It could have said kisidor l'Hashem alakacha. It would have been very clear. Consider neder. We have neder over there in Parsha Sav. Neder, malahala, nedava. Just like there, nedava comes together with neder. Afkan, nedava, imay, and therefore Bal Teacher applies to nedava as well. Next, consider neder l'Hashem alakacha.
You need the extra cedar in order to make Gzeir Shava? No.
You need what?
You don't need a double lush in order to make Gzeir Shava. No.
You need a word here and the word there.
Yeah, but you don't need the cedar neder. Just stam. It says neder here, neder there. You could compare them.
Right, but the question is if the words are already occupied, so then you can use them for an extra limit. If you need the word because it's inherent here, so you need right. The question has to be in both places or one place. That's already a big debate. If it has to be mufna lachatzoyin, if it has to be open, vacant, if it has to be vacant, you want to use it for something. You want to use it for a new halacha, right? So it has to be an open word. In other words, a word that's available for usage for another purpose. Zog the Gemarah weiter l'Hashem alakacha. Consider neder l'Hashem alakacha. What's l'Hashem alakacha? It says not only when you make a neder, it's a neder for Hashem your God. Elu. Right now we include damin, erkin, chramin, hekdeshus. Why? Because these are all things that go directly to Hashem without any human use. Unlike a carbon. Many carbonas, which the kohanim have a part in it, they have a stake in it, because once you offer the fat and the mizbeach, the rest of the meat could be eaten by the kohanim, so this is not l'Hashem alakacha. It's partially l'Hashem alakacha. Consider neder l'Hashem alakacha means all things that you dedicate exclusively to the Beis HaMikdash, and no human hand, even kohanim, has a whole hand in it. What does that include? Damin. When I say my value or your value, I'm giving to the Beis HaMikdash, whatever your value on the market is. When I say erkin, when I say chramin, when I say hekdeshus, all these things go directly to bedek habayis, l'Hashem alakacha, and the kohanim have absolutely no part in it. And as a result of that, if you delay any of these things, you're over on Bal Teacher. So kisidor neder l'Hashem alakacha. L'Hashem alakacha included these 4 categories. Next, lo yisa'acher l'shal moi. Don't delay paying it. Moshe Rabbeinu could have written, Lo sa'acher l'shalem. I know what I'm talking about. Don't delay payment. You don't say don't delay to pay it. The it says hu v'loy chilufav. Bal Teacher only applies to he and not his substitute. It only applies to the carbon and not to the substitute. Now this is going to be question. What does this mean? He and not his substitute. What substitute of what? Why is there a substitute? Why is there a chiluf? An chiluf means an exchange, a substitute. What are we even talking about? Again, we don't understand the Pirush Hamilas. The Gemara is going to analyze that soon. Next, ki darish yidrishenu, because God is going to demand it from you. Now again, this is superfluous. It says, you make a neder for Hashem, don't delay it, pay it. Now I'm going to tell you why. You know why? Because he's going to demand it from you. Yes, if he wants you to give it in a specific time and you're doing it late, he's asking you, right? It's like when you late payment. It's late payment. What's ki darish yidrishenu? Elu chatoyus v'ashamas oilus ushlamim. These are things that he demands from you. Not he demands from you because it's late. It's things that he demands from you b'chalal. In other words, it's not things you voluntarily decided to give, like a neder and a dove. A neder means you have an inspired morning and you want to bring a carbon to the Rebbeinu Shalom. You say, Harei alai oila. There's no demand from you to do it. There's no dorish yidrishenu and montes nish from there, fordetus nish from there. You're not demanding. It's a voluntary thing. Once you obligate yourself, you make a neder. Now he demands it from you. But the demand begins with a voluntary commitment. A carbon chatas, asham, oila, and shlamim. The demand doesn't begin with a voluntary commitment. The demand begins with a demand. It's a different type. A person sinned. Carbon chatas, he's mechalo Shabbos b'shoigig, right? He has to bring a carbon chatas. It's a chiyuv. Carbon asham. Oila is mechapa for mitzvahs. Oila is mechapa for mitzvahs eseh. Shlamim here we're talking about not shlamim as a neder and a davar. That wouldn't be a darish. It would mean shlamim that you're mechuyev. For example, b'chor, meiser, right? B'chor, meiser. These are karbanas shlamim. You eat, but the kohen can eat it or the person can eat it. These are all karbanas that it's a choiv to bring. Carbon Pesach, that's what Rashi says. Chatoyes v'ashamas, shehei nidrashin mimcha. Sha'arei choivei mutalin alecha. Oilas hashlamim, we mechoivin an oila. Kagoin oilas re'iyah. Shalmei chagiga, shehein choiva. The ilu neder and adava bereisha de kraksivi. Neder and adava, you already know from the beginning of the pasuk, kisider neder. So what's darish yidrishenu? Chatoyes, Hashamas, Oilus, and Shlamim. V'hu adinami lebchor, Meiser, Pesach, shehein chayva. It's interesting, Rashi puts in here the word Pesach. Why? Because our problem with Pesach was not that Pesach there's no Bal Teacher, just that Pesach's Bal Teacher happens after 6 hours. So we don't have a problem that Rashi puts in Pesach here. They had a whole sugi now that it's not Pesach. Rashi means the literal Pesach. But of course it's also Bal Teacher, it's just a 6-hour Bal Teacher. Huh?
It has the same halacha as Shlomo.
Exactly. It's this gather. And it's a carbon chayva. It's darish yidrishenu. So darish yidrishenu includes a whole new category of nidarim that I give.
Well,
Next.
Why the Gemarah did not specify now all the rest?
What?
B'chor and Meiser.
Rashi specified it.
Yeah, why the Gemarah doesn't do it?
Why did the Gemara doesn't do it?
Yeah. The Gemara goes
Shlamim, because it's the gather of shlamim. It's the gather of shlamim. That's the word. Remember, even shlamim you have a problem with. I'll tell you what. Shlamim is the choichnish. Rashi, that's why you need the Rashi. Because shlamim that's a neder and a dava doesn't go to darish yidrishenu. So you have to say what type of shlamim? Choiva. So you're already being mefarish what shlamim is. Once you're being mefarish what shlamim is, and the word shlamim is anyway not a self-contained word. You understand? Not like in the Braisa. In the Braisa, shlamim could be anything. Here, shlamim is not only it's particular type of shlamim. You have to qualify that it's choiva shlamim, right? It's shalmei chagiga. It's not a regular shlamim that's a carbon neder and a dava, where a Jew just wants to bring a contribution, a blend. Next, Hashem Elokecha. Now this Hashem Elokecha is really problematic because it already said once in the pasuk. Ki sidor neder l'Hashem Elokecha lo yisa'acher l'shalmu ki dorish yidrishenu Hashem Elokecha. Of course, he could have easily written ki darish yidrishenu me'imach. You're talking about Hashem. In fact, in the basic laws of grammar, anybody who studied grammar, you know you don't write a sentence like this. You don't repeat the exact same words that you began the sentence with when you could just say he. You pledge a pledge to God. Don't delay paying it because He will demand it from you. That's what you do. Ki darish yidrishenu. You don't say again Hashem Elokecha. So what's this? Elu tzedakos maisros. This refers to tzedakos and maisros. Where does this happen? In our Gemarah it also says pchor. It should be obvious from Rashi in a moment that he wasn't going as the word pchor. Let's see Rashi. Elu tzedakos and maisros. The hakra yiseru. The havalei lemichtav ki darish yidrashenu ukvar Hashem kasev l'mayla b'mikra. You told me we're talking about Hashem. And we already interpreted the first Hashem Elokecha to mean all the things that go straight to the Beis Hamikdash. Nidrish be la'asuy tzedakos u'maisros. We put in here tzedakah and maisros. Why is tzedakah la'Hashem fakert? Tzedakah you give to poor people. Maisah you give to poor people. You don't give it la'Hashem. The answer is shekasav behen shem zeh. Because by these two things we find in Chumash, this name says, it says ulecha tiyeh tzedakah lifnei Hashem Elokecha. And by Meiser it says, "V'achalto lifnei Hashem Elokecha, Meiser Goncha." The second Hashem Elokecha I say is what? Things that the Torah connects to Hashem Elokecha, tzedakah and Meisers. You see here, Rashi doesn't include the word P'chor, and it's obvious why. Rashi just told us that P'chor went to Shlomim. So how could Rashi include here P'chor? So that's why he does not say P'chor. And he does not say Meiser Behema, because Meiser Behema was also included before as a Shlomim. But it's interesting that Teves was guided as P'chor, and the question would be, why didn't you learn out P'chor and Ma'aseh Behema from Shlomim, right? Ki darish yidrashenu, you have to bring a carbon P'chor, you have to bring a carbon Ma'aseh. Tzedakah is not darish yidrashenu. I decided to give tzedakah. But why is that not included? So Teves says, Ma'aseh P'chor,
dependent on having like tenants.
so Teves says as follows, Ma'aseh P'chor mechi darish yidrashenu loy nafka. You know why? The loydami chiyuva didhu lechiyuva dechatas v'asham. You can't compare it. The lesle b'chayro meiser loy mechayev b'hu. It's not always a chiyuv.
It's a kiyumis, not
Mitzvah kiyumis, not mitzvah chiyuvis, right? If I have a farm and I have a b'chayr and I have enough animals, there's a chiyuv.
Stage and I bring in the B'chor.
Right.
Huh?
Right. So the darish yidrashenu is a different
No,
category.
that's like onus or
Emes.
If you don't have it, you
Emes, it's not like a neder and a dove.
You have to. If you don't have money, it's an onus. But Ma'aseh Behema, you don't have.
Right. Well, here it's not a noinus. It's not a chiyuv.
Right.
It's not like tzitzis. Tzitzis, there's no chiyuv. If you have a beggar of arba kanfus, there's a mitzvah of tzitzis. Then darish yidrashenu. It doesn't. There's no chiyuv. Go to the store and buy a beggar of arba kanfus. That doesn't exist.
You're telling me the Chatas Lashon, the 800 Tzadik Boris, that's the cheshbon. For us, it's the same thing. When Yom V'Yankiv, he
What about
not
Ma'aseh?
to bring you from Chatas.
Why Ma'aseh is not
No,
done?
but every
Ma'aseh Behema. Ma'aseh Behema. Ma'aseh Behema, I'm mechuyev to have 10 behemoths. If I have 10 behemoths,
Ma'aseh Behema is
oh,
only...
Ma'aseh of Truma.
No, in general, Ma'aseh. I
We're
make
talking
money.
Yeah,
I don't
but
have that Achayis.
Everybody's making money. Everybody needs to leave.
right, we're saying when Chad is coming.
It's a small
Truma?
amount.
I'm not mechuyev to have a field. I'm not mechuyev to have a field.
No, not true Ma'aseh. I said Ma'aseh. Ma'aseh on money.
But those are kol chiyuvim,
Ma'aseh on,
or it only comes into
on the
play.
side.
Obviously, the sugya if you.
Meiser and money. You're not mechuyev to make money.
You don't have to make money.
You could live off the soup in 18 A lot of people do that. You're not mechuyev to make money. Who says you're mechuyev to make money?
Money that was already nice.
You mean it says Sheish Yom Tavid Zu Mitzvahs Essay? That was
You don't have
that
to-
was deleted from this
You
generation.
don't have to make 10 cents.
Tava doesn't mean making money.
You don't have to make enough money that makes you not an ani and stuff. There's no obligation. to
I'll
make
call
that.
upon, but Rashi doesn't learn like this. Rashi learns that B'chor was included earlier because it's Darish Yidrashenu, and that's why what Rashi is guided here is Tzedakos and Meisris.
And not B'chor.
That's shvar.
Tzedakos and Meisris. Why? Because by these it says La Shem Eloi Kecha.
Why did Rashi learn like that? It's really not a chiyuv.
No, because it's not like Neder and a Dove. It doesn't start voluntarily. You're right. You're not mechuyev to have it. You're not going to call mitzvahs tzitzis a voluntary mitzvah. It's a hagdara, but it's not. You can also say the other way.
money anyway when Yom Tov
Oh, it's
comes
the same
around.
question. Yeah, so it's Chad. This is also not.
It's
Yeah.
a fact, you gotta pay for it.
Right. That's true. That's true. That's true.
Right.
Money was nice.
You just bring something small, buddy. You gotta bring something.
Yeah. Now the Ritva says you already had the first Lashem Alekechas. The first Lashem Alekechas should have given you also Tzedakos and Meisers. He said no, because that Lashem Alekecha you include again. We go to fasta muat, to fasta, meruba loy to fasta. That includes things that are mamish for Hashem, for the Rebbeinu Shloim himself, for the Beis Hamikdash. You can't include tzedakah, which goes to poor people. It's already a stretch. Once you have a second Lashem Elokecha, now you can expand your Lashem Elokecha to include those mitzvahs where it says Lashem Elokecha, meaning the mitzvah of tzedakah and the mitzvah of Ma'aseh, which is a very geschmackadiyuk of the Ritva. Next, Me'imach. Wow, time flies here. Me'imach. Zeleket shikha peya. What's me'imach? Me'imach includes leket shikha and peya. What's this about? So Rashi says, interesting, she'en chelkoi shel ani. Diksiv be es ha'ani imach. It says in Mishpatim, im kesef talve es ami, es ha'ani imach. You have to lend money to the poor man who is with you. So here it says, Ki darish yidrishenu Hashem alekecha me'imach. Again, me'imach is superfluous. Me'imach means that which is with you. In other words, that which is with you that belongs to the ani who is imach. That ani who is imach, that which goes to him, which is leket, shikha, and peya. Over there it doesn't say Hashem alekecha, but that goes into the category of what goes to the poor person. So therefore, it's me'imach is leket, shikha, peya. It's basically matnos aniyim.
Should go to Darish Yidrishenu.
Leket, shikha, peya should be Darish Yidrishenu. But Darish Yidrishenu you did on karbonis. Darish Yidrishenu you did on karbonis. Right? Yeah.
Oh, that's from a cat.
You could have done leket shikha peya l'cha'ira tzedakahs and ma'asros, because it's tzedakah. It's tzedakah l'aniyim. Just like you said, it's tzedakah l'fnei Hashem alekecha. L'cha'ira this could have been, or you could have learned tzedakahs from imach. You could have learned.
Belong to you.
So you can't put this in tzedakah because it's not a gather of tzedakah.
It's not, yeah.
Right. Tzedakah is you give tzedakah. This is chi of matnas haniyim. But you could have put tzedakah into this. L'chayda you could have put tzedakah, kesef talves on the imach. But the emes says that you could learn tzedakah earlier. So what you learned from earlier, you learned from earlier. And then you learn this for leket shikha peya. Finally, v'haya b'chachet. What's v'haya b'chachet? V'loy b'karbon chachet. It's going to be a sin in you, not in your carbon. Now the carbon remains good. Even if you bring the carbon 4 years later, it's not like the carbon is a sinful carbon, throw it in the garbage. No. Again, lahavdil, you pay your mortgage very, very late, the bank still takes it b'seiv upon him yafis. The money is money. The problem is in you, not in the carbon. That's the diyuk. Rashi says, Eina carbon nifsal bekach, the carbon does not get disqualified. So here we went through everything in the Braisa, and we showed how Chazal came up that all of these go into Bal Teacher. Again, we're stuck with one Pirish Hamilis, Hu v'loy chilufa, of what did that mean? That's going to be the next sugya of the Gemara till the next Amid.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.